Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order for Monday, June 16th in the City of St. John Common Council meeting. Tonight we have Councillor Lowe coming in online. And we start our meetings off with a land acknowledgement. And this evening the deputy's going to read that for us. Deputy, so over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The land on which the City of St. John, or Mattaquist, is situated is the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pescatamaquoddy, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to lands and resources. Let us pause and reflect.
Okay, can I ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem? Okay, City Clerk, over to you for the first item.
Thank you, Your Worship. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes of June the 2nd.
June 2nd minutes approval, the deputy and seconder, Councillor Darling on the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is approval of the minutes of June the 9th.
June the 9th minutes. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda, and there are three additions actually from Committee of the Whole. The first would be 17.1, acquisition of Kiwanis Park and Playground. Next addition is 17.2, acquisition and subsequent conveyance of 111 Main Street. And finally, 17.3, option to repurchase 450 Falls View.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Darling and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And Your Worship, this doesn't require approval, but just wanted to acknowledge that we did hand out an additional piece of correspondence for the public hearing tonight, as well as two bylaws that had a change in the number.
Okay. Thank you.
Next is disclosure of conflict of interest, if there are any.
Not seeing any. Next item.
Next is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I would move 5.1 through to 5.7, please.
Take a seconder, Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have members' comments.
Members' comments. Councillor Ogden, over to you first.
Everyone that there's a big event having to do with PTSD this Sunday. There's a man named Ed Kennedy who's running across the country, And Gary Brown Sr., who we all know with the White Heart Campaign, trying to help everyone with their mental illness, is helping to organize where police, fire, ambulance, I know I'm missing someone, will be meeting at TD Station at 12 o'clock on Sunday. And it's to recognize this gentleman who's running across the country to raise money for PTSD, which we all know is one of our biggest challenges, from tents to what happened in COVID. And so if people can turn out for that and show their support for Mr. Ed Kennedy, and if you need to contact anyone, contact Gary Brown Sr., and he's on Facebook and many other places. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a shout out to Interaction Theatre Company. They wrapped up their theater season this past weekend with their version of Peter Pan, and the preschool Tinks stole the show. They were fantastic. And I think they have a coffee house this Wednesday to finish up their season. But if you are interested in having your children involved with Interaction, if you go to their website, they certainly will have summer programs running throughout. And I can tell you, both my kids were involved. It's a fantastic organization for your children to be involved with. Speaking of children being involved, congratulations to our Boys and Girls Club of Greater St. John that turned 125 years old. They're officially the Boys and Girls Club of Greater St. John. But when they started, they were the Boys and Girls Club, because the first one in Canada. We don't brag about that enough. And this past weekend, thanks to their Legacy Fund, they had an alumni ball hockey game to reopen their refurbished gymnasium. So congratulations to the work that they do over there. And finally, this is the last week for Shape Your City, to hear from residents your thoughts on the budget for 2026. The CFO tells me, well, a little bit, this is our third year for doing Shape Your City for the budget. The first year we had about 60 respondents. Last year we had about 140 respondents. And at last count, this year we are over 460 online responses. So we're quite excited about that, and we still got this week to go. So please, you can go to stjohn.ca or Shape Your City St. John to fill it out online. If you like pencil and paper, it's available at our customer service center. You can pick up a copy and fill it out. And it's 12 multiple choice questions and an open question at the end, so it doesn't take you very long, and leave it at customer service. Or this Wednesday at 4:30 in council chambers here, you will have an exciting hour and a half with the CFO and myself, where in person we can talk budget and you can ask us questions and give us your suggestions. So thanks very much to those who have filled it out so far. We're quite excited at the numbers. And if you haven't had an opportunity, please take the opportunity to fill it out. And of course, as we move into budget season to gather information, if you want a personal chat, you can always call any one of your counselors to talk to budget, and we love having that conversation back here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darling, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that June is Pride Month. I wanted to do it at our last regularly scheduled council meeting for June, just in case folks forgot after the first few reminders usually go out at the beginning of the month. But I think it's so important, especially in a city like St. John, to acknowledge that, you know, as a young queer and trans professional that for a long time growing up in this city felt like I had to leave to thrive. You know, couldn't ever imagine myself sitting in a room like this, working with folks, or speaking out loud at all in a room like this with folks. So to see how far our city has come in terms of that inclusion and welcoming folks and being really intentional about it has been amazing and heartwarming. It's important to acknowledge that, see that, and also look forward and see what else we can do to make people feel even safer and more comfortable coming, thriving, and being in our city. And just hope folks take a little bit of a moment to reflect and a moment to remember that, and look forward to August, when our own St. John Pride Week actually is. So I'll remind you again then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Redwan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. There's World Refugee Day is coming on Friday, June the 20th. There'll be a flag raising at City Hall at 12:30. And National Indigenous Peoples Day is taking place on June 21st. And there will be an event taking place at Fort Latour between 12 and 2. And Friday is June 27th. The events are taking place for Multiculturalism Day at the Y, Prude, and at the Newcomer Center as well. So you can always check their Facebook page to see what's going on there. I also wanted to send a special thank you to St. John Ability Advisory Committee, especially the XSSJ group, for putting together all of the events during the National Accessibility Awareness Week, as well as the NB Coalition for Persons with Disabilities for putting on events as well to create some more awareness. And I just want to say congratulations to all the grads. Everybody's graduating, and I think, I'm sorry that it's belated, but thank you and congratulations and happy belated Father's Day to all the dads on council and staff, and of course the general public.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a shout out to all the contractors in the area. I mean, if you look around St. John right now with construction season, we've got a whole lot going on. We got road repairs, new sidewalks, curbing going in. We got buildings going up, foundations being made. So, St. John is a busy place to be. Having said that, we've got the end of school this week. So our kids are going to be out and about, and we want to be sure that people, when they're trying to make their way through these new roads and roadblocks, are watching out for the little ones. So congratulations to everybody that got projects underway, and making St. John, the best city to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Over to you, Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Not to belabor the point, I guess, but it's a nice segue into what's happening. So far in June, the One Stop Development Shop received 24 building applications with a value of $3.1 million. Year to date, as of June 12th, the One Stop Development Shop has received 301 building and development-related permit applications, the value of close to $200 million. So those are good, and it kind of ties to some of the headlines just from this last week. They often say read beyond the headlines. In this case, I'd ask you to maybe just stop at the headlines. Port growth in 2024 linked to its diversity. City's regional immigration strategy to be revamped. Marigold project keeps on blooming. Councillor Ogden. Streets in heart of St. John getting a redesign. City approves an average of 3.1% annual raise for outside workers, and that came to council last week. Congratulations to both sides. Canada's brightest young minds gather in New Brunswick to showcase solutions to global challenges. St. John Refinery undergoing a $100 million upgrade. No decision on industrial park expansion. It's coming, folks. Decision will be had. St. John Transit marks Clean Air Day. South End space for arts and community groups in St. John could become housing as part of our housing initiative in city to make East St. John intersection more accessible after 20-year push. You don't need to read much further than the headlines, but the good news keeps on coming. So over to you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Always good to hear the good news. Okay, I'm just going to wrap it up. I just wanted to bring a couple of things to your attention. One, I wanted to acknowledge the loss of Liam DeWolf on June the 3rd. He was a 19-year-old young man. He was a summer student here at the City of St. John. He'd been a summer student last year. His father, Vance London, works for the City of St. John. So to Vance and Marianne DeWolf London and the family, I want to send our condolences. And I will have to mention that Local 18 did a beautiful honor guard for him, which was very, very nice. The funeral was over at Fundy, and it was nice to have all of the trucks. He was working, obviously, for Local 18. And it's nice because it's the worst loss for anyone, the loss of a child. It defies the laws of Mother Nature. It doesn't work the way it should. So and there's no words and there's nothing you can do, but to have an honor guard at least recognizes that loss. And so that was a wonderful gesture for the family. And the other person I wanted to, he was only 19, but this other person, Claude Roussel, he died May 28th and he was 94. And he was a visual artist, a sculptor, a teacher. He was born in Edmundston in 1930. and he had received grants from the Canada Council for the Arts. He established the Visual Arts Department at the University of Moncton. He was a pioneer of Acadian modern art, and he has several significant pieces, and one of them is right out here on the front of this building, the St. John City Hall, and it's called Progression. It was put there in 1972, so I wanted to acknowledge that as well. And so to his family, I send our condolences, a life well lived and a lot of wonderful milestones for him. And on Monday, June 23rd, this upcoming Monday, the flags will be lowered to half-mast from sunrise to sunset to recognize National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism. And that's it for me. So, City Clerk, over to you for the next item.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have two proclamations. The first one is item 7.1, and this is for World Kidney Cancer Day, June 19th.
Whereas the International Kidney Cancer Coalition has declared Thursday, June 19th, to be World Kidney Cancer Day, and whereas Kidney Cancer Canada, or Cancer du Rhin Canada, is affiliated with the above-mentioned organization, and whereas Kidney Cancer Day, or Cancer du Rhin Canada, is a national bilingual community of patients, caregivers, and health professionals who work to provide every Canadian touched by kidney cancer with support, education, and advocacy for their care pathway and treatment options. And whereas Kidney Cancer Day, Cancer du Rhin Canada, is the only Canadian national charitable bilingual patient and caregiver organization solely focused on kidney cancer. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby declare Thursday, June 19th, 2025 as World Kidney Cancer Day in the City of St. John. Next item, City Clerk.
The second proclamation, item 7.2 on your agenda, is Indigenous Survivor Day.
Whereas Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, have faced historical and ongoing trauma through colonial policies such as the 60s Scoop, Millennium Scoop, birth alerts, and other practices that disrupted families and communities. And whereas Indigenous Survivors Day recognizes the strength and the courage of those who have endured these injustices and honors the resilience, the cultural heritage, and the contributions of Indigenous peoples. And whereas the City of St. John is committed to advancing reconciliation, inclusivity, and respect for all communities, now therefore I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby proclaim June 30th, 2025 as Indigenous Survivors Day in the City of St. John. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we'll need to bypass the public hearing, which is scheduled for 6:30. So after that item, the next would be 10.1. Under consideration of bylaws, this is for use of all-terrain vehicles on specific St. John streets.
Commissioner Hugenholtz, can you introduce this one for us, please?
Yes, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. The item before you this evening stems from a request from the Lorneville Trail Riders Club. This request was considered by council in December 2024 with the direction that staff prepare the requested amendments to the traffic bylaw and further that staff seek input from the community. Public engagement was undertaken through the city's Shape Your City page with the results summarized in the report before you this evening. The results indicate strong support for the changes, which would permit ATVs to access certain city streets in the Lorneville area to connect to an off-street trail network. This support was strongest in the immediate surrounding neighborhood. The proposed changes to the traffic bylaw before you this evening are for first and second reading. Tim O'Reilly, the city's traffic engineer, is here this evening to answer any questions you may have. With that, I'll turn it over back to the chair.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'll turn it over to the clerk for the motions, please, or for the resolutions.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this case, only two resolutions required, approval of first reading by title and approval of second reading by title.
All right, I'll take approval of first reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And the title of this bylaw is a bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting traffic on street in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1 and amendments thereto.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve second reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting the traffic on streets in the city of St. John, bylaw number MV 10.1, and amendments thereto.
All right, next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 10.2 on your agenda, and this is a municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 160 Cozy Lake Road.
Commissioner Poffenroff, over to you, please.
Your Worship and members of council, before you this evening for third reading is an application for a municipal plan amendment and rezoning that was submitted by Hughes Surveys and Consultants, Inc. for a property located at 160 Cozy Lake Road. The amendments would permit the subdivision of an existing residential parcel into 3 rural residential lots. The application received first and second reading on June 2nd, following the required public hearing, and I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and the item is now before you to move forward with third reading. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any questions, so City Clerk, over to you for the motions.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motions required in this case, we require 4 resolutions, 2 with respect to the municipal plan amendment, which would be approved third reading by entirety and then approved third reading by title. Zoning would be the same, approved by entirety and approved third reading by title.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve third reading by entirety. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw. The municipal plan bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 30th day of January 2012, is amended by 1, redesignating on Schedule B of the municipal development plan land having an area of approximately 3.02 hectares located at 160 Cozy Lake Road, also identified as a part of PID 55005375, from rural resource to rural residential.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve reading by entirety, third reading by entirety. Councillor Darling and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 15th day of December 2014, is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John, by rezoning land having an area of approximately 4.98 hectares located at 160 Cozy Lake Road, also identified as PID 55005375, from rural to rural residential and park.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Councillor Radwan and Councillor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Next is item 10.3 on your agenda, and this is a zoning bylaw amendment and text amendment with Section 59 conditions for 510 Boar's Head Road.
Commissioner Poffenroff, back to you, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Before you this evening for third reading is an application for a rezoning that was submitted by Stantec Consulting Ltd. for a property located at 510 Boar's Head Road. The rezoning would remove the restriction limiting the existing 20-unit residential building to seniors housing. In addition, text amendments to the low-rise residential zone are proposed to clarify the intent to permit low-rise, ground-oriented development exceeding 6 units, subject to conditions including lot size. The application received first and second reading on June 2nd, following the required public hearing, and I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and the item is now before you to move forward with third reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any questions. City Clerk, over to you for the motions.
Thank you. 5 motions required in this case: approval third reading by entirety, approval of Section 59 condition, approval of third reading by title for the zoning bylaw, and then the second zoning bylaw, approve reading by entirety, approve reading by title.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve third reading by entirety. Counselor Lowe and Counselor Stewart on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John, by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 4.968 square meters located at 510 Boar's Head Road, also identified as PID 552-12914, from neighborhood community facility to low-rise residential pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the Section 59 conditions. Counselor Darling, and Counselor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so,
And zoning by title now?
yeah, I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Counselor Stewart, Counselor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, and I'll take a motion to approve reading by entirety. Counselor Harris and Counselor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by deleting paragraph 10.43E and replacing it with the following: large-scale development in form of multiple dwellings, dwelling groups, townhouses, or cluster townhouses may exceed the unit count in paragraphs 10.43A and B, provided that, 1, the minimum lot area is 800 meters squared with 140 meters square per unit, and 2, the development meets all other low-rise residential zone standards established in subsections 10.42 and 10.43.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve, the last motion to approve reading by title. Counselor Stewart and Counselor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Do you need to read that one?
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, next item.
And next is item 10.4, a zoning bylaw amendment and text amendment at 228 Germain Street.
Over to you, Commissioner Poffenroff, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The last item this evening for third reading is an application for a rezoning that was submitted by Bruce Wilkin, Inc. for a property located at 228 Germain Street. The rezoning would enable the conversion of a former place of worship into a mixed-use development. In addition, text amendments are proposed to select commercial uses to the urban center residential zone. The application received first and second reading on June 2nd, following the required public hearing, and I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and the item is now before you to move forward with third reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Sullivan, you have a question for staff?
No, I'm just waiting to speak to the motion.
Oh, okay. I'll get City Clerk over to you for the motions.
Thank you, Your Worship. In this case, we require 10 resolutions, 2 zoning bylaw amendments. So there are 2 resolutions required with the first zoning bylaw, approve reading by entirety, then approve reading by title. The second zoning bylaw requires the same, approve third reading by entirety, approve third reading by title.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to approve third reading by entirety. Counselor Stewart and Counselor Radwan on the question. Over to you, Counselor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. I promise not to speak to every motion on it, but I'll get it all out here. So I had a professor once say, if you want to know the priorities of an organization, follow the money. The City of St. John is very good at subsidizing youth. If you're into ice sports, field sports, some court sports, in this case here, it's unfortunate if you're an actor, a singer, or just an at-risk youth that needs a cultural space. We know real estate is at a premium, and these spaces are hard to come by. And unfortunately, this has been a successful space for the last dozen years, give or take, supporting youth in the city with organizations that don't have to be funded by the taxpayer. And I just can't bring myself to vote to change one to no longer being that space. So I will be opposed to all of these resolutions.
Thank you, Counselor. All right, not seeing any questions. I've got the motions on the floor to approve third reading by entirety. So I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Harris and Counselor Sullivan opposing. Motion carries.
Thank you. This is entitled a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a piece of land having an area of approximately 2,011 square meters located at 228 Germain Street, also identified as a portion of PID 00003889 from neighborhood community facility to urban center residential.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Counselor Stewart and Counselor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Harris and Counselor Sullivan opposing. Motion carries.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, I will take on the zoning bylaw text amendment. I'll take a motion to approve third reading by entirety. Counselor Radwan and Counselor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries with Counselor Harris and Counselor Sullivan voting nay.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
And I'll take a motion to approve third reading by title. Counselor Killen and Counselor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Counselor Harris and Counselor Sullivan voting nay. Thank you.
Your Worship, this is a rather lengthy bylaw, so I'll try
Okay.
to read it fairly quickly. But a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by one, adding urban center residential to Table 10.1 in Section 10 as a permitted zone for the following uses: artist or craft person studio, bakery, business office, live work area, personal service, restaurant, retail, convenience. Number 2, deleting the 2 paragraphs following the heading municipal plan context at section 10.1 and replacing it with the following: the urban center residential zone accommodates a wide range of service urban residential development in the form of townhouses, apartments, condominiums, and contemporary non-residential uses on the ground floor. Lower density forms are also permitted, including semi-detached dwellings, 2-unit dwellings, and 1-unit dwellings. The urban center residential zone is intended for land inside the primary development area that is designated for medium to high density residential, uptown primary center, or mixed-use center in an intensification area. However, land and other appropriate designations could be zoned RC. Number 3, adding the following uses to the permitted uses list at subsection 10.1. Artist or craft person studio, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Bakery, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Business office, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Live work unit, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Personal service, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Restaurants, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Retail convenience, subject to paragraph 10.12D. Number 4, adding the following as paragraph 10.12D. Any non-residential use as permitted in subsection 10.11 shall be subject to the following: 1, be located on the ground floor of the building; 2, be located along the street-facing facade; and 3, not occupy more than 50% of the gross floor area of the building. Number 5, adding the following residential exceptions to Schedule E: RC 228 Germain Street, PID 00003889, Community Center Cultural Establishment.
Thank you, City Clerk. Next item.
Next, Your Worship, is a proposed municipal plan amendment for 1384 Lattimore Lake Road, and this is a 30-day letter.
Okay. So I need a motion to refer to the Planning Committee or to not proceed with the proposed amendments.
Is
Oh, no.
the
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner going to speak to this one?
Oh, I've got you down on this one.
Okay, my apology. Yeah, so in this case, Your Worship, all of the necessary advertising has been completed for this property, and you'll see the letter from our office, and council may now choose to proceed with sharing this file with PAC and establishing a public hearing.
Okay. Counselor Stewart, refer to PAC, and Counselor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. All right, next item, City Clerk.
And next is 10.6, and this is for a proposed municipal plan amendment, Ethos Ridge, 500 Pelton Road, and again, it's a 30-day letter.
Right, and I think I'm going to hear from Jennifer Kirchner first on this one.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. We just wanted to point out that with the, there's a series of advertisements that occur with public presentations and municipal plan amendments. The initial public presentation ad that was posted over 30 days ago did have a typo in which the decimal point was moved to indicate a much larger area than what was intended. Subsequent advertisement, including the public notice for the public hearing, as well as information posted for PAC, has the correct decimal point.
So what is that? What's the number? 8.4?
Yes,
And I
instead
think it
of...
was posted as 84?
Yes.
Okay,
so
thank you.
8.4.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, John, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, council will see on the letter itself, the decimal point is incorrect. It should read 8.46 hectares for this location. Again, this was properly advertised. We've included all the letters from citizens that have written in to your package, and council may now choose to proceed with a public hearing, which would be held on July 7th.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to refer to the planning PAC. Counselor Lowe, do you have are you going to have a question, Counselor Lowe, or do you have going to refer that? Excellent, thank you. I'll take a seconder on that. Counselor, on the deputy, on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Counselor Lowe sits on PAC, and he loves these public hearings, so he's always trying to get them, snag them for him. Next item, City Clerk.
Thank you. Next is item 13.1, a Finance Committee report with respect to procurement updates.
Finance Chair Sullivan, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know this is what everybody's been waiting for tonight. It is your annual procurement report. Now, 2 years ago in 2023, we updated the procurement policy for the City of St. John, which means how we purchase things for those watching at home. Now, all of our spending is approved by council through budget. But to go back 2 years ago, there are 108 reports we didn't see this year that we would have normally seen with spending authorities having been changed in 2023. We pass it in the budget, and if you remember, we used to get 30 pages of a Bell contract and lots of stuff in our kit that we don't get anymore. Staff looks after that. So the good news is that's 108 reports staff didn't have to write. We didn't have to read through on our agenda. So all sorts of good things. But one of the things in the policy, because we did up our spending limits, is to make sure that we reported to council every year. So there were 3 things that we need to report to council. One is procurement, the number of procurements over $100,000, a listing of any non-standard procurements, and a heads up for council if there were any cases of non-compliance. So first of all, there were no cases of non-compliance, so everything we did was in compliance with our procurement policy. There were 2 non-standard procurements which we would have seen previously in 2024, one pertaining to the emergency demolition of a fire-damaged structure, and one pertaining to an emergency purchase of a pump for the South Bay well field. Overall, there were 141 procurements over $100,000, 79 approved by the CAO within the new strategic procurement policy. And as I said, that meant 108 worth of reports of staff time that they had to work on other things. And that is your annual procurement report. I'll move or receive and file. If you have any questions, we certainly have staff who can answer for you.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of questions. Councillor Ogden, over to you for a question.
the tariffs in the world. Procurement is one way we can build the Canadian economy. If you look back at the Auto Pact that was signed by Johnson and Pearson, we arranged that we would manufacture cars, but before World War II, we made Jeeps and cars. So that meant we kept the intellectual property. When we became a branch plant economy, it was one of the reasons why we're in trouble today, is that we depended on somebody else's intelligence, design of cars, whatever it was. And today, one thing Carney is trying to do is to make sure that we build a Canadian economy. We can't do that if we don't buy Canadian products where the intelligence and design and everything are done in Canada. And one of the ways we can do that is the three levels of government spend a lot of money. And recently, we just bought a whole bunch of, I think it was American helicopters. Well, that means the intelligence and design stays in the United States. We're never going to build our own economy if we don't do that. The Europeans are doing it. The Japanese have been doing it. India will not buy a lot of things from China because they want to build theirs economy by building the intelligence. So really when we're buying, and I know that we're into world trade regulations and such, but I think we should really go out of our way to buy Canadian products where the whole Canadian thing. We do have local companies like Cook and Moosehead and Irving Oil, which that puts more money into our economy because the intelligence level is here. So I would hope that the City of St. John spends an awful lot of money, that we would keep that in mind by supporting Canadian-made products. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, back to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. And just, we don't buy helicopters as the city, but I get your point. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to shop more local, as a creature of the province, there is a procurement policy that we do need to follow. Certainly our hearts are in supporting local and supporting Canadian, and we do that as much as we can within what we are allowed to do. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Harris, you had a question?
Yeah, comment and question, Mayor. Thank you. Just to remind Councillor Ogden too, we have passed a social procurement policy, which does take some of the marching orders from the Preston model in the UK, which was tremendously effective at onshoring a lot of the investments that came out of that municipality. One of the issues, though, we continue to see in this province, potentially the country as well, but not as familiar across the nation as I am with New Brunswick, is that there's just no quarterback for the type of development that we would need to do to really take advantage of the opportunity that the City of St. John has put out through that social procurement policy. So just like anything, if there's going to be somebody make something locally that we need to purchase here anyway, there needs to be investment standing in the hallway ready to take that on. And in many cases, there's not. I know a few of us have talked to Envision about this. There is some work being done by a group out of the Pondish Center at UNB trying to get the province's head wrapped around the opportunity around social enterprise investment in cooperatives who can take on some of the new customer base that is here at the City of St. John for this social procurement list, which is quite extensive. So comment there, I think we have the infrastructure to be able to do the purchasing locally. We just don't have the quarterbacks of the investors to build and to produce what we really need here locally. But my question does go to that social procurement policy, and I'm not sure if Councillor Sullivan, if this is better suited for Mr. Fudge or yourself, but do we have any sense that there has been an uptake, someone taking up the cause of that social procurement policy to kind of localize some of that purchase, or even if we're not localizing it to, say, St. John or the region, cause-oriented sort of delivery around some of these products that we purchase?
Worship to the councillor, yeah, it's something we talk about internally quite frequently. It is a policy that we're quite proud of, and we haven't seen the uptick on it. I think one thing we're going to do, I'm not sure, later in 2024, maybe early 2025 or early 2026, is maybe initiate an engagement to understand what some of the bottlenecks are, what some of the challenges are, because we do, we put a lot of work into that policy. We would like to see it activated and used to the advantage for social enterprises. So we will engage to do that and bring back probably a report to Finance Committee with some observations.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions, so I'll take a motion to receive for information. Councillor Killen and Councillor Redwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next, we have general correspondence. The first one is item 15.1, a letter from D. Shaw, the consulting arborist profession, and there's a recommendation to refer this matter to the CAO for discussion with city staff.
Thank you. Take a seconder on that. Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is 15.2, a letter from Jay Houlihan with respect to endorsing Global March to Gaza.
Okay, so this one I'm going to talk really quickly about. This is a march that currently includes delegations from 36 countries, including Canada. The objective of the march is apolitical. It does not take a position on the conflict between Israel and Gaza. They take a position on whether starvation of a population is an acceptable form of warfare. So we are being asked to endorse the march as the only objective is to get food and aid into people in the Gaza area. So the recommendation I would be, or the motion that I would be putting forward is that Council endorse the Canadian delegation's participation in the Global March to Gaza on June 15th in Cairo. So they'll head there starting on yesterday, June 15th. The objective of the march is to ensure food and aid are provided to people living and working in Gaza. Councillor Redwan? Councillor, the deputy's going to move that. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Redwan, over to you. Councillor Redwan.
I wasn't going to speak, Mayor, but thank you for moving this. Actually, Jeff just walked in the room as you were speaking, so I just thought I'd bring attention. Thank you for joining in on the march. We appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot.
Okay, perfect. So on the motion to endorse the walk, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 15.3. It's a letter from St. John Energy with a request to present annual update. The recommendation is to refer to the clerk to schedule.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Sullivan, yep. Over to you.
Just through your worship, looking forward to having St. John Energy in front of us here. Their annual meeting is this Thursday, and I know as your representative on St. John Energy, we're going to hear all sorts of good news on Thursday, but I don't think the good news will have to wait until Thursday. Not allowed to say what it is, but tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. there will be another fantastic announcement out of our energy utility, St. John Energy. So we are just so proud and lucky to have this crew working on our behalf. So it'll be all sorts of good news from this week. We're looking forward to having them in front of us.
Meet at the Hilton for 10 a.m. tomorrow to hear what it is. Okay, so the recommendation is for the clerk to schedule the presentations. Do I have a move? Yeah, I do have a mover and a seconder yet on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is 15.4, NBFASD Center of Excellence request for proclamation and light up of landmark, and we have a recommendation to approve the proclamation request and refer the CAO the request for the illumination.
I'll take a mover and a seconder on that. Councillor Darling and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
And the last item under correspondence 15.5, the Alchemia Art Workshop request to present. Recommendation refer to clerk to schedule the presentation.
Take a motion on that. Councillor Darling and Councillor and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And next we have a few items from Committee of the Whole. So the first one would be 17.1. This is with respect to acquisition of Aquinas Park and Playground. And the resolution would read that the city enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with the One Change Inc., generally in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on June 16th, 2025, to purchase PID numbers 55155345 and 00379677, being the Kiwanis North End Play Park located on the corner of Durham and Victoria Street, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement of purchase and sale and any other documents necessary to facilitate the transaction.
Deputy's moving it. Can I get a seconder? Counselor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Next is item 17.2, and this is with respect to the acquisition and subsequent conveyance of 111 Main Street. And the resolution would read that the City of St. John acquire from the province of New Brunswick the property located at 111 Main Street, being PID number 378844, in accordance with the terms and conditions outlined in the letter from the province dated May 8th, 2025, presented to Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on June 16th, and further, number 2, that subsequent to the conveyance referred to above in paragraph 1, the City of St. John enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with Impact Developments SJ Inc., generally in the form as presented to the Committee of the Whole at its meeting held on June 16th, 2025, for the sale of the property located at 111 Main Street, and number 3, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said agreement of purchase and sale and any other and all documents necessary to facilitate both land transactions.
Deputy and Counselor Darling on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
And the final item from Committee of the Whole is 17.3. It's with respect to an option to repurchase 450 Fallsview Drive. The resolution is that the city declined to exercise its option to repurchase the property at 450 Fallsview Drive, identified as PID 55217657, as stipulated at Section 2 of the right of first refusal and right to repurchase agreement, registered on title to the property as document 4405447, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any release requested by the grantor 722329NB Inc., and approved in the form by the City General Counsel to remove that portion of the encumbrance from the title to the property.
Okay, I'll take a mover and a second. Deputy and Counselor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Lowe opposed? Yeah, motion carried with Counselor Lowe opposing. All right, that's it. I'll take a motion to recess. Counselor Lowe, over to you for a recess, and Counselor Sullivan. Perfect. Thank you.
I move to recess to 6:30.
So 6:30. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Apple says it's 1830 minutes, so I'll call the meeting back to order. And we're going to start this evening. We'll open the public hearing back up for those who are in favor. And just have a few notes that you've heard before. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening and for the other 3 evenings that we've been together. I want to do a quick reminder of occupancy limits. It's 94 people. We have extra seats in the lobby, and there are, I think, around 10 people or whatever, so there are lots of seats out there. And if all the seats in the chamber are occupied, people will be asked to take a seat out there. Before reopening the public hearing, I want to just review a couple of things. Firstly, I want to thank you for being involved. So far on this land use application, council has heard from a large number of individuals who spoke against the application over many hours of the public hearing, which has been spread over 3 separate evenings. And on June the 3rd, council heard from the last individuals who spoke in opposition to the application. Tonight is the continuation of the same public hearing. Council will hear from those who would like to speak in favor of the application and then proceed to ask questions of staff on the application before making a decision on the matter if we get that far tonight. And so we've heard, and staff has been cataloging the questions. We've got over 70 questions that have come to us. And as I mentioned at the start of the public hearing on May 12th, the city's procedural bylaw provides that each member of the public is allotted a maximum of 10 minutes to address council, and that will absolutely enforce that. The bylaw also provides that members of the public who constitute the audience in the council chamber during the council meetings may not address council without permission of council, shall maintain order and quiet, and shall not interrupt or interfere with proceedings, and shall not display signs or placards. Recognizing that this has been a difficult file for the residents of Lornville and others, over the last 3 evenings of the public hearing, I have allowed the clapping. I understand that this is emotional. It's not something that's allowed at council, so we're done with the clapping now because we've heard from all of the nays, and so we'll move on to the yeas now. This evening, for those who wish to speak in favor, I'll ask you to come to the podium and give us your name and your address, what your link is with this application. And council would like to hear all those who are interested in the application and make an informed decision at the end of the night. So I'll now reopen the public hearing, and I'll ask if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application to come forward. Oh, okay. We got it there. It's on. Your mic's on.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Stashik. I live uptown. I'm here tonight because I care about city planning decisions, and this is a big one. I'm actually not here in favor or against this application. I wanted to go first tonight because of that, because I don't feel that I can make an informed decision on this application, because I wasn't able to find the right information to be able to make that informed decision. And that leads me to the question of whether you folks have the right information to make a good decision on this issue as well. To give you a bit of background, when I first started educating myself about the application, I reviewed all the council packets. I looked at all the information that came out of the task force meetings, at least everything that was published on the website. I spoke to a friend of mine who's an ecologist who's been up and through the wetlands in Lornville and knows the area really well. I spoke with friends of mine who are tenants in other industrial parks to understand what was going on with those locations and why we weren't looking there instead. And while I was trying to do this due diligence, I realized that I had kind of skipped over a really fundamental question that I think is the fundamental question here, which is why are we expanding any industrial park?
Well, Sarah, I'll have to stop you there because what we've heard, we've probably got 70, like I said, over 70 questions, and some of those questions are going to be answered tonight through staff, because that's the questions that we've been asked as council. So you will hear those answers tonight because we need to make that informed decision as well. And if we don't feel at the end of the night that we have that information to make a decision, then we can always ask staff, we can come back with that information as well.
And that's excellent. That's really the reason why I'm here, is to encourage that, because I was not able to find a cost-benefit analysis that said to me, based on data, that an industrial tenant would not cost us more money than the revenue that they would generate. Because it seems to me that this, at least based on the staff presentation from industrial parks, this is about the tax revenue. That's supposed to be the benefit statement, right? So taxes don't come for free. Services have to be provided for those in order to get those taxes. So what are those costs? I was not able to find that information.
Well, yeah, we're going to have some of that information for you tonight, so.
Okay.
All
Then
right.
that's really the only thing that I wanted to say here, is just really encouraging you to make the informed decision. And if you don't have the data, that's okay. But that also means that maybe this would be a good time to pause this decision until you have the data to make a really strong choice and a defensible choice, because I know you guys have been going through the ringer on this one.
Thank you.
So that's all. That's the only reason I came tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking for people who want to speak in favor of the application. So I'll get you to come up and give us your name.
Good evening, Your Worship. Councilors, Andrew Beckett, 34 Caitlin Street, Rossay. I'm here tonight as CEO of Envision St. John to speak in favor of the application to rezone the property. I've got several areas that I'd like to highlight for Council's consideration. Starting with the need to diversify our economy. There's been a lot of talk about St. John being the most vulnerable city in terms of tariffs associated with trade with the U.S. and how significant that trading partnership is. Expansion of the industrial parks gives us an opportunity to look at broadening our export markets through attracting different types of investments. Just as a reminder, over 50% of our economic base comes from industrial or industrial logistics businesses. So expansion of our industrial base is key to growing the economy of the region. There's significant investment interest. I know when Mr. McKinnon spoke at the start of the hearing, he spoke to a couple of files that are active at the present time. But with climate change, the pandemic, we're still seeing post-pandemic things where we've seen a shift where a lot of production companies used to be operating under a just-in-time side of things with their warehousing and the like. They've now moved to a just-in-case because of the disruptions of the supply chain during the pandemic. They want product closer to hand, and so there's a lot more demand for things like warehousing space and the like that companies want to have. We're also seeing this shifting geopolitical landscape that's creating a lot of uncertainty as far as investment goes, and Canada is still seen as a good place to make investment. We've seen a lot of interest in things like the battery supply chain, whether that's for electric vehicles or to supplement wind and solar arrays that need the batteries for balancing out their load. Hydrogen production, data centers, warehousing, and light manufacturing opportunities are also prevalent. And we're talking about economic-based jobs. These are jobs that bring new wealth to the community. They're not just shifting the money within the community. Economic-based jobs bring new money into the region. There's certainly been some uncertain times over the last few months because of the political climate with the U.S., but quite frankly, some of that is starting to settle out, and businesses are starting to look at investment opportunities more readily now than they were. We want to be an export-focused manufacturing and energy hub that can compete in global markets. And I emphasize global markets. We're not just talking about the U.S. We're trying to broaden out beyond that into global markets. In order to do that, one of the key pieces that we're missing right now is land. So why are we looking to expand our industrial parks? We simply don't have a land supply to meet the requirement of the companies that are looking for development in this area. They're all looking for 100 to 400 acres of land at a time. The parcels that we have right now available in existing industrial parks simply don't meet that requirement. They've got to have servicing requirements. The servicing requirements have to be met in terms of electricity, raw water, logistics access to roads, multimodal opportunities. Rail would be ideal. I'll speak to that in a minute in terms of the challenges associated with that, but also building off our port is a key part of the locational advantage we have. There's also things like sewer and potable water to have in place to service the different types of investments. Suitable land, as much as St. John has a large land mass, suitable land is in short supply. Over the past year, we did a study associated with establishing a multimodal transportation and logistics park to support the port. We engaged in a study that looked at land we were particularly looking at the west side of the city because that's serviced by CPKC, where most of the container traffic goes. After about 7 or 8 months worth of study and looking at various sites, the conclusion was there wasn't a site that was suitable, that met the logistical requirements of having both rail access and highway access. We've got a lot of land mass, but a lot of it is rock, that making it very hard to develop. So in terms of, and the other thing that I'd mention is in terms of land that doesn't have some impact on residential properties, that unicorn doesn't exist. We've looked at things, we've looked at several different areas where there was potential development. If you look, for example, at the land that was being proposed for the second refinery a few decades ago, the second refinery was being considered, there was well over 1,000 properties that were within a kilometer radius of that piece of land. So to try and find a piece of land that isn't going to have some impact on residential properties just simply isn't available within the St. John region. The Spruce Lake Industrial Park represents a very excellent location in terms of the servicing that's in place. There's electricity available, raw water supply is available, it's close to highway access, it's got deep water coastal access, it already has sewer and water service available in the area. You're talking about services that if it had to be replaced and established somewhere else, you'd be into several hundred millions of dollars worth of investments to get that servicing level on another piece of land. In terms of the site selection process, when we go through a site selection process with a company that's looking at potential investment in here, this will sound harsh, but the site selectors are looking for a reason to exclude you. They have all kinds of different locations and possibilities where they can locate their business. They are looking for ways to narrow down their list as quickly as possible. And so when they're going through their process, they come in with a very harsh lens and try and eliminate sites as quickly as possible. So therefore, you need to have as much in place up front so that you make it hard for them to say no. And so having available land, it's not a matter of saying, we may be able to get land here or we may be able to get land there. They will walk away from it. They want to know that the land is there, that it's ready to go, and as much of the approvals are in place as possible to secure their investment. In terms of the scale of investment, again, I just want to remind Council in terms of the scale of investments that we're talking about. We're talking about companies that are prepared to spend billions of dollars. That's billions with a B. Data centers, an investment well in excess of $1 billion to establish. About $3 to $3.5 million a year in property tax revenues that would come from that. 750 construction jobs, 150 direct jobs, but I want to take that and multiply it out. That's 150 direct jobs. That's not talking about all the indirect employment that would be created from these and the induced side of things. So when you're talking about direct jobs, that's the people that are working in the data center. But then there's other businesses that are needed to support that. That's the indirect jobs. So it's suppliers that would come in to support different aspects of their operations that they need from time to time. And then you get the induced jobs. These people want to, they'll go to the grocery store, they'll go to the retail outlets and the like, and so there's a lot of induced jobs. The typical multiplier with these is anywhere from 2 to 3 to 1 in terms of the actual employment that's created. So if you're talking about 100 to 150 full-time jobs, you can be looking to anywhere from 300 to 500 jobs that are created within the community. And in terms of the population impact, those people come here and they've got families. The typical multiplier is something like 5 to 1 in terms of the actual impact in terms of population growth for the area.
Mr. Beckett, I do have a counselor with a question. Counselor Harris, if we want to pop over there, do you want to finish up?
I've got one
Okay, perfect.
more point, and then I can,
Okay,
happy to
great.
take questions. I would I'd just like to emphasize with council, we are an industrial city. We need to build on our strengths. We've got a strategic location. We've got a thriving business ecosystem. We have a skilled and adaptable workforce, and we've got an outstanding quality of life that we have to offer. We've got a lot to put on the table with those, if we've got what we need to attract investments. And land is a key limiter for us right now in terms of attracting investments.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Harris, over to you.
For you to Mr. Beckett. Thanks for being here. You know, we just had an election, and in that election, we voted in a liberal government, and we had a conservative government, and they all seem to be talking about this shift in landscape and this economic restructuring and reordering that both of them committed to in various ways. Some went further than others. When I was just in Ottawa and traveling to the FCM, I tried to talk to as many folks as I could, but it really did seem from the speech we heard from Mr. Carney and from other councillors that there really is an eye on the East for reorganizing the national economy. Can you tell me, Has this changed significantly in the last 2 months from where you sit in entertaining these offers, these proposals that are coming in? What has that landscape shift looked like from your desk? Because at the end of the day, we have to make a decision about alignment. Do we align with the upper levels of government and their direction, or do we not? And of course, not aligning is something that we've had the displeasure of being behind in many times. We're not aligned with the province on how they arrange industrial taxes and how they allow municipalities to tax industry or to tax them at different rates and classes. And we have had no success in finding a dance partner with the province to help us navigate that.
Okay.
But do you think
Can I pass that
the
over?
national conversation is landing on your desk differently? And how would you characterize that for us?
Look, I guess I'd point to two things, Councillor, that I think the landscape started to change over a year ago. We went from 2 years ago where we were having virtually no investment interest in terms of the local area. Last year, we had 22 active files on the go in terms of companies that were really taking a very serious look at the St. John region. I think the port plays a big part in that in terms of increasing the visibility of this area. The increased traffic through the port, the increased attention that's getting in terms of the national supply chain, the more extensive markets that opens up on a global standpoint creates that interest. The last few months have heightened some of the interest and urgency on some files. Certainly at the national and provincial level, we're seeing more appetite for things like resource development that we haven't seen in the past, promoting the development of the supply chain and supply corridors, the recognition, the urgency around expanding the export markets. All of those play really well into where we're situated. Like I said, land is the big limiter for us right now in terms of being able to meet the needs of some of the companies that are interested in developing here.
Thank you. Deputy, can you squeeze your question in quick?
Thank you, Worship. I'll be pretty quick. Two quick questions, Andrew. So how does this application impact growth in the St. John area? Specifically, how does it impact growth in the St. John area?
What it opens up is the possibility to be able to respond to some of the investment inquiries we're getting right now. It opens up parcels of land that meet that 100 to 400 acre requirement that we simply don't have available in any of our existing industrial parks.
Okay. And second one is, how would this application compare with something like ecotourism business we heard about?
The scale is very tough to compare from that standpoint. And look, it's not lost on me that I'm also, as CEO, I'm also responsible for tourism promotion development. Ecotourism is a fantastic opportunity. We have an abundance of areas where ecotourism can be developed. This doesn't limit the opportunities for that to be developed, but in terms of scale of investment, scale of impact on the area, you're not even in the same league in terms of what these types of investments are going to bring with us over the long term. Ecotourism is going to be a smaller employer and not have the same types of investment that these types of industries are talking about.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for questions. Thank you. I'll take the next speaker who would like to speak in favor of the application. Oh, here comes.
Good evening. My name's Craig Bell Estabrooks. I'm the president and CEO of the Port of St. John. So thank you for the opportunity to chat a little bit about the Port Authority perspective. So as Andrew mentioned, we've had a good run the last number of years. We've been generating a lot of attention on the container front. Just to back up for anyone that may not know how we're structured and the governance and who owns the land that we operate on, we're one of 17 Canadian port authorities across the network. We're one of 5 container ports in Canada, so a lot of talk about supply chain resiliency for our port as one of the five containers. In the outer harbour, we handle liquid bulk through our partners at Irving Oil. Then as we get closer in the harbour, we have a dry bulk facility that exports potash. From Saskatchewan, there's no mining that occurs in the province of New Brunswick to date, so that terminal is entirely product from Saskatchewan. Cruise ships, from a tourism standpoint, we handle upwards of 150 to 200,000 cruise passengers every year. And then, of course, on the west side of our port, where we've put a lot of attention in the last number of years, we have a very large container operation. It's operated by DP World. There's been about $250 million worth of investment from the Port Authority, from the provincial government, from the federal government, and we've gone from moving tens of thousands of containers to hundreds of thousands, employing hundreds of more people along many different supply chain jobs, from the ILA, international longshore labor that DP World employs, to more tugs, more pilots, and just more general economic activity in the harbor. And it is a balance. I heard earlier, the notion that we're an industrial city. It's true, but we have to be a very livable city as well. So it's something our team at the Port Authority, we try to be as conscious as we possibly can about the impact on residents, the environment, and trying to set targets to be better. And it's something that we strive to do every day. It's not easy to turn back decades worth of activity, but it's something we really think about quite a bit. And why I wanted to talk about the industrial park today is that we are a landlord port. So the whole notion of what we do is to lease land to private partners. Those user dollars is how we raise revenue. As a port, we put that money back into the infrastructure and have really good people employed on our team so that we have the most strict health and safety standards, emergency response, and et cetera. So why I wanted to talk a little bit about the industrial parks today and the need is that a lot of this growth that is occurring today at the Port of St. John is from cargo that's origin and destined is much further inland. So we're actually not seeing a lot of manufacturing opportunities utilize the Port of St. John today. There's been many groups that I've spoken to. The village of Macadam is very interested in being a manufacturing value-added hub. I know Andrew Beckett and the team at Envision St. John are very interested as well. And this is how you turn port activity into big value-added jobs. So for us, one of the newest clients of the port is Americold. They're a large refrigerated import-export cold storage company who's investing a lot of money at the moment right now to be complementary to the DP World services, employing 100 longshore workers right on the waterfront. We have warehouses today that we want to upgrade in future years and continue that economic activity. But we're out of land. The land is scarce around a waterfront, and if we really want to tap into that inland piece, like many have in Quebec and Ontario and other examples in our country, you really have to look to logistics parks or smart parks. They call them all sorts of different things around the world. We call it an industrial park here. Maybe we're doing an injustice by calling it an industrial park because it can be manufacturing any goods. And I'll stop on this note and open up for questions, but one opportunity that we see that's very present for us is around food-grade products. And that's going to be something we talk a lot about at the port because we've got a collection, both our oldest tenant, Crosby Molasses, now Crosby Foods, and the newest Americold are co-located in a food-grade area that's generating a lot of activity. From a liquid bulk standpoint, that's what Crosby does, food-grade liquid bulk. Americold will be the packaging, the import-export of temperature-controlled food that's really critical for all of our lives, but really the global supply chain. And then on the other side of the harbor, obviously, Nutrien and the potash that's moved, very important for global food supply chain as well. So what I'd love to see is opportunities further inland. That's that value-added food component. Two of the other long-term shippers at the port, McCain's, Cavendish, these are frozen products that people enjoy all over the world. That's that value-added food that we'd love to see us take advantage of. And you really need that inland connectivity, and warehousing and manufacturing needs to occur somewhere off the port because our space is very limited. So, happy to answer any questions.
Have
I gone on too long?
Yep. No, you're perfect.
Okay.
You're only at 4:40. Councillor Redwan, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Mr. Bellester Brooks. Thanks for coming. You're talking about your strategic alignment with an industrial park. I'm just kind of wondering, and you've also talked about how the port's expanded and how there's been so many investments. So I'm just kind of wondering, what is the capacity of the port as it stands right now without more investment? How much more can you handle? And, if you can talk a little bit more about your alignment, we kind of hope to see come to St. John, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So capacity, we measure it on the terminal, so what DP World can handle from a laydown standpoint, and then fluidity. So how well is rail performing? We do some truck, but it's about 80% of our cargo comes in and out by rail. That's become a big part of the value proposition. So that fluidity becomes a little bit of a challenge. I know there's a certain intersection here that's very, that a lot of councils are interested in, and so are we, fixing that bottleneck, because that has become a challenge if we want to continue to grow. So we do have capacity to continue to move containers in and out of the port, but I think if we want to tap into that bigger economic piece, the cargo today is largely coming from much further inland, not St. John, not even the province of New Brunswick, and largely not the maritime provinces. It's coming much further inland to our port because we're offering through DP World and CPKC, CN Rail, a really competitive service. But if economic development agencies, and we have one that wants to do this, if they want to take a little bit of that piece of opportunity and do that finished product here, or add a little add value to a good that's being imported or exported, it needs to occur somewhere in the proximity, and we're just not seeing that today. So if St. John wants to get more of that piece, the Village of McAdam, for example, is very interested in a lot of this as well and wants to take advantage because they're right on the railway.
Are you getting product in from Quebec too? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Really?
Quebec, Ontario, we have imports that go as far as Vancouver, just with fluidity challenges on the West Coast.
Well, I know just during COVID, their port backed up in Vancouver, and you guys were,
Yep.
pretty good to go for the most part. So it was quite impressive to see, by the way. No, that's great. That's very helpful. I mean, I think a lot of people think that because Montreal is doing this as well, and Halifax as well, that we're not as big of players as we actually are. So that's good to hear.
A decade ago, we weren't.
Right.
It was the infrastructure investments that got us back in the game, and then recent developments, specifically with CPKC Rail, that really got us into a different stratosphere that people are looking at St. John once again, as they did 100 years ago.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to move over to Councillor Sullivan. Over to you, please.
Through you, you talked a lot about the value to the port and the port's partners if the Spruce Lake Industrial Park is expanded. Is that something that the port, CPKC, to your knowledge, or DP World, to your knowledge, like, would you be proactively working with organizations about and helping to market that in order to support your business, or is this something that you are advocating for because it would help your business, but you understand, like, would you folks be partners in helping to market this?
Today, we haven't really done that to date. We focused more right on the terminal because there was the monumental challenge of scaling up and putting $250 million in the infrastructure, then having your private partners put hundreds of millions. And we've been really focused on being that national partner. So we don't just market to the Maritimes. It's really telling that story about how we can be the resilient port for Canada. But as we refine the model, and it's getting better, our operations aren't perfect, but they're getting significantly better. That's where we'd love to see the value-added cargo. It's the industry term, and I don't know why they use it. They call it stickiness. So what DP World and CP Rail tell us that when you service so far inland, they can go anywhere, and it's a competitive landscape. Our port saw decades of decline. So when the cargo is not close to you, they have more and more options. If you can anchor it and have that value-added French fry being manufactured right here, or product X, the likelihood that they're going to go move into another port becomes very low. So that's one of the major motivators that we have. We'd like to see the cargo close here. That's why Americold is so big to us.
So you would see, like, because certainly, I mean, Port of St. John's a big player, but became really big when DP World came in, became massive when CPKC signed on. So with your experience, like, I don't know if they're here or not, probably not, but those organizations, like something like the expanded industrial park and industrial availability, maybe I just didn't quite, would they possibly go, yeah, it's good, we have that, or is that something that they would see as adding value to them and helping increase everything?
Yeah, they operate in jurisdictions where this is just a commonplace. You have zones where they could set up. Should they need a warehousing facility, whether it's in Vaughan, where CPKC has a lot of their major activity in Ontario, there's just an expectation that the communities that they operate in have some type of designated area where if they choose to put a transload facility or a warehouse, they have access to that.
Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship.
That answers.
Councillor Harris, can you make it fast?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor. So the federal government has been talking a lot about the changes around interprovincial trade barriers. From your position, I'm not sure, but are you getting more interest from across the province in the lead up to that, which is scheduled for 2 weeks from now? We're supposed to see some of that pass, and it's supposed to unlock a fairly sizable amount of the national GDP here. So where does that put you in conversations with the rest of the country?
Yeah, great question. The interprovincial trade has become a very hot topic amongst the rail lines specifically because they have the capacity to move product across the country. So they're really interested from a domestic intermodal standpoint, moving that. So it wouldn't necessarily hit a ship, but it's that good economic flow of activity. And we think it's really positive. Short sea shipping in Canada, much like the United States, there's rules around foreign flag vessels that go from Canadian port to Canadian port. So there are limits somewhat today, if you're going to see that short sea Canadian port to Canadian port. I see it more happening on the rail line that, with good interprovincial trade opening up, that will occur. But equally, the federal government, about trade diversification, they want to open up to other markets. So the Prime Minister, our Premier, has talked a lot about utilizing the Port of Saint John from an import-export to Europe. Today, 3 of our 5 container services that call on a weekly basis are either Mediterranean or North Europe based. So we've really taken advantage of the Canada Free Trade Agreement over the last number of years, and that's where we've seen a lot of growth, a lot of European imports.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Hi, Craig. So I don't want you to paint a picture of doom and gloom here, but at the same time, I'm going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball.
Oh, no.
What if we don't do this? What if we're not prepared for the growth that you're telling us is happening? We can see some of it happening. You're experiencing it every day. Andrew just talked about it. What if we're not prepared for that? What if we don't? Where does that business go?
Well, it's a question we ask ourselves a lot at the Port of Saint John because we know what it's looked like over the last 100+ years of being a thriving seaport, but we also have decades of decline. And the post-World War II story for our city and our port, if we're being honest, the growth trajectories that were planned in the 50s and 60s never came to be. At one point, we were the same size as Halifax, both as a port and as a city, and that hasn't occurred. And the value-added manufacturing piece, the competitiveness around our mills, has really been a provincial story of 20 years of decline. So it's wonderful that we're handling new volumes, and we appreciate that, and we're trying to service our clients well, but we'd love to have that product either start or finish much closer to home. But we don't have a population base that can service a container line on its own today. So we are much more like Prince Rupert, the other big container port on the west coast that's remotely in northern British Columbia, whereas Vancouver and Montreal, they have container services that just service their cities because the populations are so big. We don't have that here.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'll take the next speaker who'd like to speak in favor of the application.
Tim Jones, I live in Milledgeville, here in St. John. I want to take the opportunity to be here tonight. I know I was here a few times over the last few months and a few times last year as well. My interest certainly is reflected in the business community and the opportunity that an industrial park can provide for those of us that maybe not on that scale, but certainly benefit from the growth of our city and from an industrial park. First and foremost, I want to take the opportunity to thank council because I know this is a really difficult file, and I know we've had a lot of difficult files lately. I know it's difficult to not only sit in this room, but in the back doors and have those discussions. So I want to acknowledge that as well as staff. These are not easy. They're not easy to put together, and there's a lot of complications, I'm sure, that come in along the way. So I just want to take the opportunity to do that. And last but not least, the Lorneville residents, thank you for coming out and speaking. This is your opportunity to come out and have your voice heard It may not be, or it may be the result you're looking for tonight. But I think it was really important to hear from all those Lornville residents. I've been here for all meetings from start to finish to hear their concerns. But one of the things I do, a couple of things I want to talk on, and Your Worship, I promise that this makes sense. There's new information going to come here, because I know that's important when we stand up here and have our conversation. The encouragement I see as well with this particular file from staff is that we're seeing rezoning applications open to having sites become pad site ready. We also are seeing an application for rezoning for a site that doesn't require some of those infrastructure or engineering reports prior to rezoning and those unnecessary or difficult costs for smaller investors to take on, for example, water and sewer infrastructure. So I think that that's really encouraging for development for our city, so that we see more developers come to the table, big and small, bring those opportunities, and not necessarily have to provide in great detail on the investment to that. So I think that's really encouraging to see, and I just wanted to mention that. But the main reason I'm here, and the main message I'm hoping we grasp from this, is that in some recent files, we've heard a lot about the importance of a social license. We've heard about the importance of seeing our industry and our big spenders reinvest into our city, reinvest into our citizens, reinvest into the communities they impact. In a recent file I attended, that was front and center. Here's an opportunity today to also bring it front and center. We have, from my understanding, with the information I've gathered, I could be right, it could be wrong, 155 to 220 million phase one development of this particular industrial project if it goes through. From a 1 to 4% investment for a social license from RDC, from the City of St. John, the citizens of Lornville have the opportunity to rectify some of the issues that they've experienced out there in that community we've heard about, to put some of the upgrades in place that we've heard about, to encourage growth, to encourage the lifestyle, all of that within the community. So my recommendation very much surrounds around, what are we doing with this potential opportunity with the industrial park and the investments we're going to see? We just heard Mr. Beckett speak about billions of dollars that are going to be coming to the city. Where's our bylaw? Where's our development fee that includes that social license that puts the accountability on those investors coming to our city to give back to our community and our citizens? And I think that's really important. So my recommendation, certainly to staff here tonight, is let's put our action where our words are. You have the opportunity to lead this through a social license, whether it be through a bylaw. I've had the conversation with multiple staff about how that potentially could be possible, whether that be through a development fee. I'm not sure whether it makes us competitive or not as a city to attract business. I can't answer that, but that's up to you guys to answer. But you have the opportunity to lead the way, because we are going to have more files come across this desk, from files that we've turned away that potentially could return, but also from the new investments we're going to see within the industrial park if approved here tonight. So the importance for that social assistance, social license, as we put it, 1 to 4%, I've heard, do it. Put your action where your words are. So I'd love to put the motion forward that I hope somebody around this table puts that motion forward to staff to review, to look at, and to put into place, because we've had the LNG projects. We have a Irving Oil project. We have a ballistic project over there that we're, parking lot project. You have the opportunity to create for the city and the citizens that infrastructure dollars required without coming from the taxpayer. And I also think for those great community corporate citizens that we have here today, they do a lot. There may even be a way that we factor in what they currently do in our city and how that contributes to the social license, so it doesn't make us uncompetitive, in our market. So that is the primary reason why I'm here. Because when we bring the negotiation to the council chambers, there's negative messaging that leaves these council chambers and the television for the citizens at home that are watching, not only here in St. John, in New Brunswick, in Canada, and across the world. I'd like to see that come to an end personally. I'd like to see us put that policy, bylaw, fee structure in place that addresses once and for all the social license that you're seeking and take the fight out of the council chambers. That's my recommendation to city. That's why I'm here, to see that move forward or, potentially be discussed on the opportunity to move forward. I almost feel this is a double-edged sword because I kind of want to turn around and talk to the Lorneville residents, and I won't, just don't want to be disrespectful to council. But I think your feelings are real. I think the process is challenging. I think the questions are challenging. And I think that you may not get the result you're looking for tonight, but I don't necessarily think you have to lose the battle. I think that you need to push for the social license so that you can see the improvements in your community. I took a drive down through Lorneville, stopped and talked to a couple of residents, understood their concerns. And there's a lot of things that we could be doing out there. It's a gem. It's our St. Andrews. It's our St. Martin's. It's ignored. So in my perspective, to the council, or not to council, to the community citizens of Lorneville, look at what's next. Look at what's next for you guys. Maybe it's those streetlights, maybe it's those sidewalks, maybe it's improving that community center that I walked around and checked out and needs some love. But tonight, don't let this defeat you. Push for the policy that has been preached at this table. Push for that policy.
Tim, I'm going to interrupt you
In
there.
saying that,
'Cause
thank you
we're-
for
we just- yeah,
thank
land
you for
use.
having me, Your Worship. That's really where I'm going to end.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll take the next speaker who'd like to speak in favor of the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of the application. City Clerk, do we have anyone registered to be online?
Your Worship, we do not.
Oh, okay. I thought we did have someone. All right. I'll ask for the third time if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application. Right, I am going to close the public hearing. And then, now for this phase, this is where my team will ask questions of staff. So Councillor Harris, you are up first with the first couple of questions. Over to you.
I think this is important to capture. I've been doing my best to try to keep things clear between where we started originally and where we're at now. So if we could have, whether it's Mr. McKinnon or whether it's our planning team, if we could get a synopsis of what has really changed from that original proposal that we started with last year, that went into community engagement, that went into redrafting and then has landed here. Can we get a glimpse of that and talk about those highlight important pieces? I know that there's some significance around, especially around the understanding around buffer zones versus setbacks. I know there's a lot of people that think there's 150 meters, even though then that's a buffer zone, and talking about what additional is set back from that for those different buildings. And I know certain types of uses have additional setbacks. So I think some of that's important to try to capture if we can. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Pankaj.
You should, once you phone, go get it.
Councillor, we got your mic on, Councillor.
Through the mayor, while the clerk is helping me bring up a page from your agenda packet, maybe I'll start summarizing some of the key changes. When we first went out with this project, setbacks were a huge concern. We introduced the concept of a setback to really create some distance between where the residential community is and where this industrial development is to be expected. We had begun with a very nominal 30-meter setback, which was seen in other industrial uses. We were fairly certain that through consultation, some of these distances were going to be informed and changed. So one of the first things that have happened is we have created a ribbon that really, straddles the entire perimeter of the project, and it's 150 meters wide. It runs 5 kilometers in length. It's about 75 acres. So that is the first big move. It has gone from 30 meters to 150 meters. Secondly, once that 150 meter closes, we have another 250 meters of setback or distance where only medium industrial uses, those types of uses where there is not much impact, those uses can go within that. This could be large parking lots, this could be large retail uses, this could be a variety of uses that are complementary to the big industrial stuff. We created a total of 500 meters between where this buffer ends, 150 meter, and where any heavy industrial can be considered. So that is the biggest distance we've created. There are no such precedents of incremental setbacks within the province. This is something fairly new here.
I just wanted to, I know when myself, I apologize for that. Can you clarify? I feel like you're saying that, this sort of exceeds the norm of what we see in Atlantic Canadian industrial parks for this. And I've been trying to figure that out. So is that what you're saying?
Yes, we are saying it's a fairly new idea. This particular project involves light, medium, and heavy industrial. It's a combination of uses. What we are trying to do is keep the heaviest uses away from the residential. And because we are allowing, medium industrial, light industrial, retail, we have that opportunity to populate some of that land with uses that are not impactful. So it is a sort of incremental strategy to kind of keep heavier uses away from that. Not only that, when it comes to heavier uses, we have introduced this concept of risk assessment. We want to understand when a project comes forward, what are the potential risks and what are the mitigation measures. That mitigation measure may very well say this particular use needs to be another 400 meters away from it. And we would have to abide by that.
Would that be the Industrial Parks Board that would put that in place, or the planning team?
So the applicant, there's a list of uses. We've defined them in the zoning bylaw, which are heavier uses, and we've created a requirement that the developer officer shall review these studies. And it will be prepared by a professional who does risk assessments, So that's the added layer in terms of process and us ensuring that sufficient distances are met. When it comes to the wetlands, provincially significant wetlands, there is a provincial requirement to keep a 30-meter buffer. We've doubled that to make it 60 meters. And that's, again, up on the screen here for everyone to review. We have created a requirement that industrial developments in the area are primarily green or clean, right? We have prohibited a list of uses. We are not looking for other refineries. We are not looking for asphalt plants. But the number of uses, despite this being a heavy industrial park, we have eliminated because we really are looking at the next generation of the economy, the green economy, the high-tech economy. And some of these uses are going to be large in scale. The logistical needs might be large in scale, which also makes them heavy, because a large lorry coming in will require larger turning radiuses, will require larger roads. And so heavy doesn't always mean heavy in polluting terms. It means in scale and magnitude.
And where does that register? We're looking at a range of industrial parks around New Brunswick. Moncton's on its 4th expansion on theirs. How do we shape up around those regulations and those limitations? Would these be would we exceed those existing, or has that been reviewed by your team?
I think we looked at regulations around the province. We looked at 5 cities who are doing these heavy industrial uses. And I think the big differentiator is the presence of industrial infrastructure. The industrial water is something very unique. And if a project like a data center has to go, which needs cooling needs, it's not potable water, it's industrial water that is going to be needed. So I think the infrastructure really is where the conversation changes in the way we shape industrial parks. And as projects come forward, we apply a similar review process. We will ask for TIS, a traffic impact study that starts to define what the needs are. And then the infrastructure is appropriately designed and built mostly by the proponents. So those are some of the changes. Then we have added some additional policies to clarify what the Spruce Lake Industrial Zone is, where is it, and its boundaries. And there was an existing definition within the municipal plan and some heavy industrial zones. So we've expanded, given clear policy statements so that there is some clarity about what that intent is for this land. I think for a number of years it has been sort of preserved for industrial opportunity. We've tried to clarify what those boundaries are. Some of the other changes would be establishing height limits with specific distances from existing residential property lines. So if there is a particular project that is in proximity to a residence, we would identify what that viewing angle is from that site, and we would have landscaping buffers. So we are trying to, on a case-by-case basis, ensure that you're not kind of visibly impacted by some of these uses. We have, again, I already spoke about the risk assessments, which is, again, will be completed by professionals who do this. We've increased maximum lot occupancy. It's important when we have limited land, you want to make sure you're using it to the maximum. So we've set a 65% lot occupancy. And lastly, we are implementing a perpetual groundwater monitoring program that will be designed by hydrogeologists in place all along the perimeter of the zone, immediately adjacent to the residential properties. So we have policy statements about protection of groundwater, and we are just as concerned about the well water and its impacts. So just where the 150-meter buffer is, that's where we would be implementing a well water monitoring program. And this is really intended to catch any sort of events that may be occurring so that we can be informed ahead of time. And that distance may help us. And I think we have some experts that can speak to each of those pieces, but largely these are the changes that have truly stemmed from the conversations with the community and the various concerns that they've raised.
All right, Councillor Harris, I'll come back up. I'm sure you've got more questions. So Deputy, over to you. We'll go around round one, and we'll start up
Thank you,
again.
Worship. Hunky, I mean, we've heard, you might as well come back. Come back, my friend. We've heard a lot about, in terms of the industrial park and the concessions made and everything, but what's really in it for Lorneville? Like, what can Lorneville expect if this were to come to fruition in terms of their community?
I think we have some staff who could maybe better speak to the community benefits, but I think what I can say today is that this really is a citywide initiative. I think, it's the next sort of generation of industrial development. There are job opportunities that will be available citywide. In terms of direct contributions, I think at this point, we've identified the LPP program, right, which is the land for public purposes, and that equates to about 8 to 10% of the value of land. We have clearly indicated that the monies coming out of those proceeds would be part of a fund that would be spent within the Lorneville community. What we really want is that partnership with the community to figure out how would you like to spend it at a time when it matures into a significant resource. But that has been the starting point, and through a community liaison community, I believe the St. John Industrial Parks is open to conversations about how else we could support the community in benefits.
Okay, and I have another question. Like, we hear a lot about light, medium, and heavy industry. And, when I think of heavy industry, I think of oil refineries, and I think of pulp mills and that sort of thing. Heavy industry has changed, a lot. So explain to me why we still use the term heavy industry. It's kind of like an industrial park could be, just a manufacturing park or something like that. Like, these terms are really outdated.
Through the mayor, councillor, while industry is changing and evolving, and there are new sectors of green energy and whatnot, there still are some uses that are heavy in nature that can be polluting in nature. And what we have done is a two-pronged approach. We've kind of eliminated some of those that are really harmful, really polluting, asphalt plants, car wreckage businesses, all of that. But the other aspect is the scale and magnitude, right? I think it goes back like a large data center. It's going to be a large structure, and visibly it's going to be significant and will need things like landscape bufferings, right? It may need larger vehicles to come and service it. Logistics parks will require, significant traffic, and therefore infrastructure investments have to be according to what that is proposed. So I think the scale and magnitude still requires us to identify them as heavy and therefore assess any risk that comes out of it. So the risk assessment, to do a risk assessment, we need to identify what are those impacts. And it's true that some projects, they need emergency planning, they need risk assessments. And so I think there is a category and validation that we do need some heavy industrial and identify it accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, you're up next.
He keeps sitting down. Thanks, Your Worship. I'm going to follow up on that point, actually. Pankaj, give me an example of a non-emitting heavy industry. Like, I think you may have touched on it at the end, because I need to help get my head around this, because I don't want to have any emitting anything else built in St. John, like anywhere. But I understand that, like, so can you help me out with that? Like,
There are a few examples in this packet of yours that we've spoken to. A large electrical substation. It's a heavy industrial. It's a significant structure that looks like a large industrial operation. Really does not have any emitting issues. It may have some sound in the immediate vicinity, but if you were away 500-600 meters, the impacts start to diminish. We have a new sector which is the hydrogen sector. It's an emerging technology. And that's something that we are looking at. So these are not the old generations of refineries and whatnot.
So-
I think there will be other opportunities.
so are there anything in the wording and what we have in front of us right now that would allow emitting industries into the Spruce Lake Industrial Zone? That would, whether it be air, water, like spewing potential toxins?
I think at this point we have a broad categorization, and we have indicated that we're looking for low emitting or non-emitting, right? So there is language to prohibit or limit those uses when they come forward. We can assess them. I don't know if today I could speculate all the possible uses that could make
But
through that.
but I
You know
guess
what I mean?
is the language that we have in front of us right now, somebody couldn't come in by right. They would be somebody who would require extra further assessment?
Yes. So if we notice a project is coming forward and we think that it has impacts that are harmful to anyone, we would immediately ask for a risk assessment.
Okay.
And that's the starting point for the real evaluation.
Okay. Thank you for that. Following up on the community benefit, the LPP is a starting point. That's pretty broad and unambiguous. I'd like to ask the question, how much money, when? Like, really, how much money would the community expect from the LPP process over what period of time?
Through the mayor, I don't know if I'm fully capable to speculate on those numbers.
Have we got another staff who can?
Mr. Dobbelstein, I guess, where are you? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry.
We're just getting your light on.
Through your worship to the councillor. We did an analysis on potential community benefits based on the land value at the time of subdivision, which is how LPP is calculated. And there's two metrics. It's either if it's raw undeveloped land or if it's developed land that's then subdivided. So there's a delineation between a high and low forecast. If the entire park was developed the way we think it could be developed, we're potentially looking at between $3 and $8 million for LPP that could be used specifically for projects in Lornville just through the LPP lens. We would also anticipate that if there was any large-scale businesses that would develop, similar to what we've seen with Emera, Irving, others, they'd want to make other investments in the community as well beyond what would just be prescribed through the LPP program.
And that would be voluntary?
Sorry. Additional contributions would be voluntary, but LPP would be required. One thing that's different here is right now the LPP funds, as you may know, go into a fund that
basically the whole community applies for. We're proposing a policy change specifically for Lornville, that Lornville then gets to make a decision and recommendation to council on how those dollars get spent in Lornville. So any money that's raised in Lornville stays in Lornville for the benefit of Lornville residents.
So $3 to $8 million over the full build out of.
From what we're estimating now.
Okay. A lot of concerns from the residents with regards to hydrological assessments in their wells. And do we have somebody from staff who can speak to that? And just before you speak to it, one of the asks is around the publishing of the results of the groundwater monitoring.
So, through the chair to Councillor Sullivan. So, I believe I might refer that question to somebody else in terms of publishing the results. I was coming present to answer technical questions on groundwater related questions. So I imagine we would, but.
Mr. Clark, I can send that over to the
Your Worship, I'm happy to
CEO.
speak to that. Fully transparent in terms of sharing our water quality data. We do that now. It's available for all our potable water, and we would do the same with any groundwater quality monitoring.
Okay, thank you. So with regards to the monitoring of wells, a lot of concerns from the residents with regards to, how soon something shows up to be able to mitigate anything before there's any hazard, the responsibility if there is a problem. Could you touch on those things, please?
I certainly can, yes. I think that there's an order of precedence that really needs to be established when we start considering these questions around protection of groundwater. And so my colleagues indicated that a hydrogeological assessment would be conducted as a result of this. And I want to touch on something that was highlighted in the EIA that needs to be substantiated, and that was the assertion that there is a hydraulic disconnection between the wetlands in the subject development area and the aquifers that are supplying groundwater to the wells of the residents of Lornville. And so far, that hydraulic disconnect has not been confirmed or denied. So the first step in any hydrogeological assessment would be to qualify that. And I think that the quote that was included in the presentation by one of the individuals from Lornville. I apologize for his name, Dr. Certainly. So there was a quote that was included in one of the presentations previously from a professor of water resources at the University of Dalhousie, and he said that the groundwater wetland disconnection cannot be automatically assumed without a hydrogeological context. In many cases throughout the world, there are strong connections, and wetlands can be important groundwater recharge zones that sustain aquifers. Disconnection could be shown through hydrogeological characterization and monitoring, including measuring water levels under natural and perturbed conditions. This is exactly what we propose to do. This is what the hydrogeological study will do. This has to be determined conclusively by the hydrogeologist who is designing this program. However, it is necessary to establish that connection through drilling a series of monitoring wells to monitor the water table elevations so that we can establish what those trends are in response to seasonal and climatic variations, so that we know the way that the water table elevation varies throughout the year under natural conditions, so that that can be monitored and provide an early warning if there is going to be any indication of groundwater depletion, which is also the same indication that would let you know that there's potential risk for increasing for saltwater intrusion. Both of these were brought up as concerns by the residents of Lornville, and both of these are monitored in essentially the same way through the monitoring program.
So what I'm taking away is there is water science that has to happen first. So, and then the plan has to be put in place for the monitoring once you figure out.
We will have a clear picture of what the groundwater monitoring program looks like in terms of where do we locate the wells? How deep do we place them? What are we testing for? Those questions will all be answered, but we have to first answer the question. Are the wetlands connected to the wells?
Gotcha. So what's the process that happens there? Like this happens, and then just it all kind of happen, engineers do it and it shows up, or are there checkpoints that it comes back somewhere?
Well, I think that, I can't say for certain because the groundwater monitoring program has not been yet developed. This ultimately will have to go through the hydrogeological consultant or hydrogeologist who is retained by the city to answer this question. I would expect that there would be some sort of incremental deployment of the program to follow the development. And it has to be done in a manner where we can monitor for potential impacts and respond to them before we've gone past the point of no return.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps some staff could follow up just on the process of where that comes from. And I've got a few more, but I'm happy to come back.
CEO, over to you.
Yes, really, we'd be engaging an expert hydrogeologist, to give guidance on that. So these are the sorts of things that they are engaged to do, and they do, regularly throughout the province. And so we would engage someone with that sort of expertise to provide guidance in terms of how we would best establish this in the interest of the community.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Redwine, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to go up to Councillor Lowe after I'm done with it, and I'll come to you. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. Through you, I think probably to Punkage. I'm wondering if you can give me an idea in general, if we're looking at the city of St. John, what amount of wetlands that Lorneville encompasses, and I'm not talking about protected wetlands, because obviously there could be no development there, but the wetlands that are not considered protected wetlands. And you and I talked a little bit about categories of wetlands. If you could speak to that, Punkage, we chatted earlier today.
Through you to the councillor, broadly speaking, this province categorizes them into two separate classifications. One is the provincially significant wetlands, and we have a significant amount of mapping for those sort of water bodies, and distances, buffers that we have to maintain, right? And I think the other category is a series of wetlands that are on site but may not be as significant. And I think there is a process through the province to one, understand what sort of flora fauna exists, what is the significance of that, and based on that assessment, whether they could be relocated, compensated in another place. So I think if I'm just trying to open the GeoNB map viewer, which tries to show the amount of water bodies that are present. And I mean, in the St. John region, there is significant water bodies everywhere.
Absolutely.
I mean, we don't really have tracking of what happened in the past, but I'm sure significant parts of our city at some point would have had water bodies that we've had to replace, rebuild, and so on and so forth. So here I am. And I think this is the area that we're looking at, and this is our project site, everything that is south of King William's Road. And if you just look around the landscape, just the lands north of it have significantly higher number of water bodies.
So are we looking, just so I know, I'm sorry, Punkage, are we looking at like those orange areas on the map?
Yes, we're looking at all of these brown and yellow layers here identified, and you can just see the landscape that we are surrounded with is full of water and water bodies. So yes, there is some level of terraforming where you're kind of morphing the land into something different. Some of the water bodies get recreated in the form of man-made stormwater management ponds. Some of them get retained to deal with water before it gets discharged into it. And we really have to depend on a proper, rigorous stormwater management process to figure those out. But our landscape is full of water bodies. So no matter where you go in this region, you would be dealing with water bodies and wetlands that are, fall in the second category.
Can you kind of show me where like Lorneville is in relation to everywhere else? So right in that area.
So the community of Lorneville are all these homes right here. And this yellow is the first significant water body that connects to Marsh Brook. And there is another one up here that connects to Mill Creek, I believe. and a number of tributaries, which are, again, intended to be preserved. So, but if these are the other significant wetlands on the area, and there were a number of questions, what about the land north of it? And if you just look at the scale of the problem, you would have many, many more wetlands to consider if you were looking at other sites.
I'm also wondering, I have another question, Mayor. I'm just wondering as well how, if you can tell me if and how, I know that staff said that Indigenous leaders were consulted. Just wondering how they've been consulted and what the process is going forward and in keeping with consultation with Indigenous leaders.
So when this project began sometime last summer, there were a series of sort of meetings that have taken place with the community, but it really began with 2 open houses that took place in the Laurenville community on 17th of July 24. Stemming from that, these were pre-PAC meetings. There were, again, engagements at the PAC meeting. And following the PAC meeting, council made a motion to set the community liaison committee. And since then, 7 meetings took place. And I think what staff were really able to do, and I was not present, as a planning agency, I'm responsible for the review, but members from the growth team and other staff met with the community, and there were 7 meetings. The first meeting was on 19th of November, and there were discussions around financial costs, timelines, what the community felt about the project. They wanted more information about the gravel pads that were being proposed last year. The second meeting took place on 3rd of December, and there were questions around which other lands were explored for this particular project, why it couldn't be located other places such as the windmills. And I think some of the reasoning we've shared with you today was shared with the community back then. So really about what other opportunities existed in the region. Third meeting.
Pankaj, I think, I was going to say, Mr. Dobbelstein has his light on, so he can probably respond to the question that you're asking.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that was the task force
Right.
meetings, but I'm wondering about the
With the
Indigenous
Indigenous, yeah.
leaders.
So I'll
actually
pass that over to
specifically.
Mr. Dobbelstein.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the councillor. So notification as well as initial assessments or assessment letters were sent to all First Nations in the province in June of last year when the EIA was registered. And it was sent to all leadership in all First Nations communities. And the government in New Brunswick continues to have ongoing dialogue with First Nations as part of the EIA process. And they're engaged with any First Nations that are interested in engagement. I would note, I think we've seen in the media, we received a letter in your kit from Chief Tremblay, just to provide a bit of clarity on the difference. So Chief Tremblay is a traditional chief from an old system of governance appointed by grandmothers. But he's not an elected chief or councillor of a First Nation. So the province has been in touch with all the elected officials. They may not have told Chief Tremblay, which may be why he is unaware of the consultation that has been happening. But there's been consultation that has been ongoing and remains ongoing.
Okay, so they'll
Thank you.
continue through it. So this is basically at the provincial level, they end up doing the consultation. It's not something that happens with the city at all, is my understanding now. Okay.
Yeah,
Sounds
maybe I
similar
can
to-
just add to that, Your Worship. So the province would and has invited the city to be part of that going forward, but it has been provincially led to this point.
All right, Councillor Lowe, you have a question? We can't see you, though. We'll have to get the screens.
Yeah, I do. And I don't know who can answer it. I'm driving down to Kings William Road, which I have many times. I turn left, I come through the village. I want to turn right. Well, I want to get out of there. I want another exit road from Loneville. Because if this passes and we move machinery in, heavy machinery in to work, to dig, and people to work, there should be 2 ways. There should be a way in and a way out, and a way out and a way in. And I don't know who to ask.
We got the specialist coming right up to the mic right now.
I got Tim O'Reilly.
So I'm going to try to answer question, Councillor Lowe, but certainly correct me if I don't. I guess right now King William Road was constructed, and in terms of high level of capacity to deal with a lot of traffic, including access to and from Highway 1. So as it stands now with level of development expected in that area, we expect a current design of King William Road to be able to handle all the traffic coming to and from both Lornville community, as well as any access to construct the different properties along the road as well. There will be opportunities, as it's indicated in the zoning, that as different developments actually come on board and be developed, that other traffic studies will be completed going forward. But the current design of the road is appropriate to handle trucks coming and going from the different properties as it stands now.
No, that, excuse me, that never answered my question. My question is, can we have another road at the end of the Kings William Road to go right so people can leave? If an accident occurred on the way in, there's no way out. There's no way out for anybody in Lornville. So what I'm asking you, this project, the money that we would get, we're talking $3 to $8 million. Can we not have a road at the end of Kings William Road turning right?
Okay, so maybe if you can bring up this screen, if you don't mind. So it's up on the screen now are the major transportation routes in the area. So the yellow is Highway 1, red is King William Road, which is obviously the subject site. Green is Lornville Road, and then the purple line is the potential future secondary access in and out of the area. So again, right now, when you think about it, all the development that's going to be occurring on King William Road is going to be occurring before or after you get out of Lornville. So along the road itself, there's people are going to have the opportunity to get in and out of the Lornville community and get onto Highway 1. It's actually, it's interesting. There could be an opportunity in the future as development occurs where that secondary access may be required. But again, there'll be certain checkpoints along the way as this site gets developed in terms of different industrial properties to establish if there's a certain risk profile for the community where that secondary access is required. But as of right now, it's not. And like I said, anywhere along King William Road where the development is going to occur, if there's any issue along that road, the residents of Lornville will be able to get out through Highway 1.
I'm just going to move to the CAO. Hang on for a second for the end of the question. Here.
Yes.
It's the CAO.
Bill didn't answer
Your
my
worship,
question.
Your worship, just to expand upon Director O'Reilly's comment, the opportunity for a second road or secondary access, as he's pointed out with the purple line, is a potential and a possibility if there's development. And there could be a business case, there could be a tenant who would request that because of their level of operation. And keep in mind as well that, for any development opportunity that would be proceeding, there would be risk assessment done. That's something that's been put forth. A risk assessment would be considered. And that's another opportunity. If it's identified through a risk assessment or if there's a need through a business opportunity, that could possibly come to fruition through one of those ways.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to go to Councillor Killen, and then I can start round 2.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so this may be for the CAO or probably maybe the growth team, actually. Can you outline how community feedback, like should this actually happen, especially the concerns around environmental protection, quality of life, transparency, be incorporated into the planning and ongoing oversight of the Spruce Lake Industrial Park? And how will residents be kept informed and involved if this did happen? Like what does that look like?
Okay, we're going to get CEO of Industrial Parks to come up, do you think?
Sorry.
To get started? Good.
Thank you for the question, Your Worship, and Councillor Killen. Through the Community Liaison Committee, there had been the suggestion several times that there would be an ongoing, if this is to pass and there is development, that there would be an ongoing type of requirement that, as you put, required,
Yeah.
so that the community can have input, so the community can know what's happening how that's going to unfold, what the community benefits might be, and ongoing consultation. And I welcome that as part of the industrial parks, GMS of the industrial parks. I think it's a great opportunity for all involved.
Okay, so it'd be more like you kind of keep the CLC intact, like the community liaison group intact and keep that going?
I think
Yeah.
that's what that looks like,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay.
up for discussion
Up for
too.
discussion. Okay, but it's on the table as well.
It is on the table,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Ogden, you haven't had round one yet, so I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mayor. My big concern are the wells, especially the people closer, I guess, from the Point Road up. If I'm wrong on that, correct me. But I'm really, really concerned about the wells. And I know we want to build a new green industrial park. The one we have at Grandview is probably the worst example of an industrial park that we could have, and I think the sooner we fix that, the better. And, you know, I'd like to see the scars of Splains Cove, Black Beach. I've walked them all when I was a kid, and I walked them today, and they look terrible. And the area, I don't know, they took about 1,000 acres to do Colson Cove, and they only used 140. And it was never reforested. And the leachate from the dump. But that really creates a lot of lack of trust. And so I'm really worried about the wells the most and the forest. And I know I've talked to staff, and I keep reading this 1,500 acres. But they keep telling me, no, Barry, it's only half of that. But what I see in the public and what I see people saying is two different things there. And I think, like, we haven't done a good job on this communication and talking to the people of Lornville. I don't think we have. And there's room for improvement. And I hope the people trust us, that we can fix some of those things and that we can really have a green industrial park, if you wish. There are examples of them, and we certainly, if we build one that's not that way, we're never going to attract business again. And Mr. Esterbrook's talked about we want to grow the port, and we're doing things differently now, that type of thing. But I really, really worry about cutting all those trees down if not necessary. And because we've all seen what happened to Champlain Heights and Forest Hills, and they just bulldozed everything and built. And that's not the way you do things today. You build around trees, you build with nature. And, but those forests and those wetlands and wells are really a concern to me. I know I've talked to Commissioner Fogan about it a few times and other people. And so I would like that addressed more. I'm still just not sure. And if this goes ahead, and we do need jobs, and it is an opportunity, but it's got to be done with the people of Lornville and with nature. So,
Councillor Ogden, did you want Mr. Clark to come up and speak about that, our water expert, right now? Or are you good?
That would
or
be
is that
great.
just a comment?
No, that would be good, Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I referred to Mr. Fogan, but
Well, you said that's infrastructure. You said water.
that's who I spoke to about it before.
Okay, did you want to hear from water, or did you want to hear from?
Sure, whoever you think is
infrastructure?
best.
So I thought I'd maybe take a few seconds to just talk about the EIA process, which does look at the overall site development for this property, as well as any property in the city where you're proposing something that could require additional environmental approvals. So an EIA is being undertaken as part of phase 1 for the gravel pads. It's regulated through the provincial government, through the Clean Environment Act. And Schedule A is very robust, and it lists every type of activity or project that could possibly require an EIA. And the EIA would look at the overall site, it would look at the water courses, the wetlands, as well as other components of the activity. And this includes everything from extracting minerals to actually developing a tourism or recreation site. So the sky's really the limit with what gets incorporated. Any future proposed project or development within this area would likely be subject to subsequent EIAs, and it would be subject to additional environmental regulatory requirements. And there's 3 pages of what they call undertakings that incorporate it. And it includes, amongst it, work within proximity to watercourses, wetlands, as well. When they establish a decision for an EIA and for things like a wetland and watercourse alteration permit, establishes where you can do work on site, where you can't. And by work, that means anything like putting a trail in, removing trees, things of that nature. So they would be establishing the framework for where development could happen on each of these sites. The city is one of the many entities that are circulated EIAs for comment, and we provide feedback as well as a variety of other entities. We're able to put comments or feedbacks regards to site development. That would be conditions or requirements of the EIA decisions. So we would have the ability to say, retention of trees where site development is not required. Typically with site development, and you see this regardless of the type of site development, you really focus on site development in the area where the activity is going to occur. You typically don't go beyond that because costs would increase to do work outside of where your development footprint is going. So that does provide some guidance as to how it would occur. Typically an EIA would not indicate clear cutting of an entire piece of property as that. They would have conditions based on the actual
I'll go over to
footprint.
Mr. Dobbelstein to add to that as well. Sure.
1,500 acres. It's how many acres?
Don't have it right in front of me.
I'm going to go to Mr. Dobbelstein to get the clarification on all that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Over
you,
to
Worship. Through you to the councillor. So we've done an analysis on impacts to lands. We know that the project site is approximately 584 hectares in size. And there was 2 different models that we looked at. We looked at one based on the current EIA and some of the challenges that the biologists and scientists found when actually walking through the site and discovering there's wetlands and there's trees that need to be avoided and things of that nature. So we also know there's significant land constraints in terms of different topographies and steep slopes that would need to be avoided. There's also provincially significant wetlands that we want to buffer around and water courses that we want to try to avoid. So with all of that, there's different options ranging from what we think somewhere about 28% of the land could be used if it's still pessimistic, which is approximately 165 hectares in total, and that would leave around 420 hectares untouched. So that's if things are as challenging as the EIA has shown them to be. If they're not as challenging in other parts of the site, you could see potentially as much as 254 hectares of land become available, or around 44%. But that needs to be validated further by additional engineering work and additional site work. And I would mention as well, and you would see this in your kit, this is only every area outside of the current EIA geography would need additional EIAs for any additional work or development that would have to happen in that area. So there's a phase 1 EIA that's going through, in parallel to this rezoning process, but any future development that would impact potential wetlands, trees, flora, fauna, anything would require subsequent EIAs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, going to you now.
Round 2, Mayor, thank you for that. This is a question to Mr. McKinnon, if you want to work your way up. Couple of, there's been lots said about the failures of the past and about the failure of tables like this, higher levels of government to protect the interests of people in this community, but across the entire city in many cases. And when something came out, I'm just going to read this brief snippet because I thought it was an interesting piece that came out of the First Nations Major Projects Coalition on June 6th. It says, with initiatives seeking to expedite major project development, it's essential that government proceed in a way that does not repeat past policy failures. First Nations are not obstacles to developing a national economy that promises prosperity for all Canadians. Goes on later to talk about this desire for many First Nations across the country to be ready to partner on, lead, co-own, and own major projects that are around some of these new economic opportunities. We obviously have an amazing partner in Tobique First Nation partnering with us on the Birch Hill project. How does your board, Mr. McKinnon, at the Industrial Parks Board, how do you see yourself engaging with the other stakeholders to build those co-ownership opportunities at whatever economic opportunities may come to St. John? I mean, I know we're talking about Spruce Lake, but I think that's a lens that I'd be very interested in understanding how you see your role as leader, as a CEO, but also how you've seen that conversation happen around your table, because I know we have a former band chief with Edwin Bernard, who is on the Industrial Parks Board, as well as 2 members of the Lorneville community. So there's many stakeholders here. This was a really good quote from a group that's looking to find ways in. It's a lot there, but can you try to help me understand that lens?
So I just want to make sure that I understand your question.
Sure.
So there's consultation with First Nations. How do you see that unfolding? There's consultation with other stakeholders. How do you see that unfolding? This group, government, anything, there's boatloads of stakeholders with everything that we do. So as much consultation as possible for the greater good, I'll say. We're fortunate enough on our board to have First Nations represented. That's fabulous. So we get that type of input. There's all kinds of other mechanisms through the provincial consultation process that there's going to be actions fall out of that as it relates to this. We mentioned the Community Liaison Committee with Lorneville and the stakeholders there. I think that's an ongoing process for sure that has to be in place. I'm open. My staff is open, our board is open to as much consultation as we can get to make informed decisions and not repeat things that happened in the past. Have I answered your question?
You have. There's only one more piece to that, if I can, Mayor. I know I just ran out of time 2 seconds ago, but the co-ownership model is a really important piece that we have to figure out. We cannot continue to offshore our jobs and offshore our manufacturing to somewhere else in the world where they don't have the labor protections or environmental protections. We have to find ways to fix some of that distribution problem where we can. But that does mean putting the ownership model into the hands of folks. Do you think there are proponents that you've talked to, and I know we have letters of interest from 2, is there a pathway toward co-ownership model or equity building opportunities in those companies or companies general that you're speaking with?
I'm speculating now if I make that comment, but
sure,
anything's possible. I mean, we would look at it for the interest of St. John, but I'd be speculating. I don't know. It's early days. We've had letters of intent, and all that to say that these 2 folks that I've mentioned, they haven't spent any money yet.
Yeah, we've had proposals before. I understand. Thank you.
But they're on the cusp of that. I'll say that.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to whichever staff might be able to address this. So part of the environmental conversation in the report was changing 15-meter setbacks from water courses. And then it says something like to 30 meters to 0. And I need some help understanding that piece.
Mayor, I think the setbacks to provincially significant wetlands were 30 meters, and we are doubling that to 60 meters. So I'm not particularly following where you
I was just, as I was reviewing my notes, somewhere in there, I thought it was 15 meters and we were doubling it to 30.
I think we've got that.
30 to 60? Did I just misread something, or after 3.5 nights, my brain is just mush and there wasn't a 0 in there somewhere?
I'll go over to Mr. Dalbestein.
There's a series of setbacks related to wetlands and water courses, and you are correct. So as our Director of Planning just spoke about, there's the setbacks related to provincially significant wetlands, and any wetland in the city right now, for that matter, is 30 meters. And that's the city standard, or we're proposing to double that to 60 meters within the subject area. I do want to clarify for the public, because I know there was a letter that misinterpreted this. Any area outside the subject area is not subject to that increased buffer. So that buffer on people's homes, there's some homes that are actually closer than 60 meters, they're not impacted. The rezoning only impacts the area that we're talking about this evening. So that's one point of clarification. Increased 60-meter buffers to PSWs to really demonstrate that there was no intention at all of impacting those sensitive areas. The water courses are proposed to shrink from the normal 30 meters to 15, but they would still require wetland and water course alteration permits, or WAWA permits, within that buffer, and that's regulated through the Department of Environment and Local Government, and that would be subject to the EIA. But that's just so that we can have larger buffers to residential areas, and so that we can use more of the site without causing more impacts to flora and fauna throughout the site. So that water course buffer is normally 30 meters per side, and we're proposing, in line with the EIA, to have it at 15 meters per side. So those are the two buffers, 15 meters on water courses and then 60 for the PSWs.
Okay, so that was the reduction piece that, so going from 30 meters to 15 meters on some water courses allows you to move further away from the residents?
Correct. But it would still be subject to WAWA permits. So if there's any, so it's still subject to the EIA process.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I understand. Process question through your worship to whoever staff can answer. We've had a lot of conversation over the last year around this horseshoe on several different files with regards to community benefit. And I know Councillor Harris has brought it up. I know I've had some initial conversations with Ms. Kirshner about actually exactly what Mr. Jones was talking about getting some policy, and it's hard to put policy together when you're in the middle of stuff that needs the policy. If this goes forward, I'm not satisfied with the LPP, and then we'll talk about it. Because the LPP, I think it's a great idea to take the money that's raised from it and keep it in Lornville, but that period of time could be really extended. And the other piece I think of, and then once it's done, they've got a full, hopefully, I'll call it a logistics park, and no more money coming in to support. Like when I think of other models, Ms. Kirshner's educated me a little bit on what they do in Toronto with super developments, where there's a developer fee. If you look at what happens out at the landfill, which is still, and Lornville has educated me, they got hosed. The new landfill, which is still in St. John, the town of Grand Bay Westfield gets a ton of money out of there every year forever. They have a community fund. What process do we go through? How do we make sure, again, and from a financial point of view, no offense, but like the money that we raise in Lornville from property tax wouldn't be enough to do the kind of development to get down to Black Beach or to get to that lighthouse, and to do the ecotourism stuff that I think could be done as well. What process do we go through to make sure there's some sort of legacy fund, so it's not just one-time LPP money and then it's done? Maybe this is the testing ground, but for the mega projects that we have, and we're trying to kind of one-off ideas around the table and the staff, we really need to get to the point where we develop a policy, but we've got a short period of time to do something appropriate here. How do we do that?
I'll start it off with Mr. Dobbelstein in a second, but I agree, and I think anyone who's talked to me about this has always said, no matter where you're going with a lot of these big builds, all the cities need to get more money out of it. The PST that the province will make, they're going to take 40-some% of the double taxes. You're going to end up with the property tax, on it. But how do you get a bigger chunk of that money going forward? Historically, we haven't in New Brunswick. So that is something that we need to be looking at going forward. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Mr. Dobbelstein.
Thank you, Your Worship. We did a high-level environmental scan on community benefits frameworks across the country as part of this study. And what we've learned is there's various models. And there's various models that are based on the legislation in the province where they reside. So there are some limits under the Community Planning Act and Local Governance Act that do handcuff us a little bit, but one of the things that is available is the LPP program. That is available in New Brunswick. We did look at other models such as Toronto, Ottawa, others, where they have a fee, where at the time of land sale, they would charge like a 1% fee or 4% fee. There's other options where they would charge it at the time of permit. So you come in and the construction value of the project determines what you pay. That can be looked at, but what we sort of settled on recommending at a staff level at this point was using the LPP program, but readjusting it so those benefits accrued in Lorneville, and Lorneville could have a say in how those were used. One of the things we're cognizant of, and I think Mr. Beckett spoke to this, if the cost of admission is too high for a business, they will look elsewhere. So every business is going to be coming to New Brunswick looking for an incentive, likely from the federal government, definitely from the provincial government, potentially even looking for a handout from this table. And you would have a decision to make about whether you want to do that. But if you set the cost of admission too high, they will simply go to one of the other 300 municipalities that are larger than ours that don't have those charges. It doesn't say we shouldn't do that. But I'm just setting, like if the table stakes are too high, it may dissuade businesses from coming here.
CAO, can I bump over to you as well?
Yes, Your Worship. In addition to that, I would say, there's nothing precluding council from at some point, as we look at recreation, as we look at the needs of Lorneville and understand the desires of the community, for us to fund something through the capital program, looking at, of course, a business case opportunity, which is part of our capital budget policy now. And with respect to the LPP, given that, the land ownership would rest, I would expect with St. John Industrial Parks, we could still administer that LPP. And thirdly, we would work with developers. So when they come in, or St. John Industrial Parks works with them to look for what is the social license, what are they providing, above and beyond, the day-to-day jobs that would be a new add to the community or the tax base growth.
So I appreciate the response. I appreciate the principle of assigning money to Lorneville community having the say in how it's spent, not folks from outside coming in. I certainly understand the competition, and we don't want to do anything that is a disincentive to bring in good business. But with respect, I at least for this councillor, that's still not good enough. Like, we can control what we can control. We can't control the provincial government, what they give us as rebates for whatever taxes are paid or whatever. We can't control the voluntary contributions if a business comes in and chooses to or not. We did decide, I think we would have got around to it eventually, but the fact that the Galt Road had a significant project, I think that elevated for us the traffic circle that was in Move SJ, but I think that moved it up the priority because of what was happening in the Galt Road. I would really like us to accelerate what it will look like. They figured it out with the landfill, that there's a Zamboni going around and around in a rink in Grand Bay Westfield that's got a landfill sign on the side of it that I'm fairly confident was purchased by tipping fees that we all pay. There must be something we can do so that we're not waiting for the first subdivision LPP contribution. Whether it's directly related to this project, which I think, the whole matching principle of finance, I think if we've got money coming out of business in there, whether it's through industrial parks or whether it's through property tax, we can do something. And, for everything we didn't have to do with that has happened to the families of Lorneville since 1967 and amalgamation in 71, and everything I've been educated on, there's got to be something we can do. So I would really appreciate hearing more from staff and finding out what we can do that isn't just one-time money when something happens.
And I think it's fair ball for us to say, like you mentioned, we saw that happen on the Galt Road. You're going to see some investments in Milledgeville. So the places that do have growth deserve to grow, because there's lots of places that don't want growth in the city, and so the places that do have growth do deserve some of that capital money as well. I agree. Councillor Redwan, over to you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Norton's up next. Oh, yeah,
Thanks, Your
you haven't
Worship.
been on the
I guess
docket
I'm
yet.
really just kind of parroting what Councillor Sullivan has already said, and we're here for Lornville, but to help illustrate that, a big part of the conversation as it relates to a previous application at Galt Road was around host communities, and when it's a difficult ask for communities to get behind development and councils to be pro-development when the host community doesn't benefit directly. And for many years, we heard these frustrations, and I think, not everybody can be right, but everybody needs to be heard, and that's why I'm thankful for this process. But things like sidewalks in Lornville that are outside the PDA for 12, 13, 14 years, I've heard that door to door for a number of years, and I wish I could roll them out, but I can't without the support of this council. Lights that meet standards that would be consistent within the PDA. We look at, I can talk about really low-hanging fruit. An AED in the Lornville Community Center has been an ask now for 3 months. I could talk anywhere between an AED all the way up to sidewalks, going back as far as a bridge that didn't meet standards when the Bailey Bridge was there because of issues with the culvert. Councillor Lowe is he's eloquently talked about the fact the secondary access road to provide access in and out beyond what exists now. I believe it's well within the power of this council and staff to bring forward some type of policy or provision that says, look, if there's LPP monies, and we've heard that from Mr. Dobbelstein this evening, then the far lion's share of that, especially with an application like this, needs to go for direct reinvestment into the community. And I think, one of the benefits of third reading is for us to add, sharpen our pencil, all kinds of analogies, add more meat to the bone, but that is something that I keep on hearing. And if we're going to be pro-development, then we have to be pro-community, especially pro-host community, for the ones that at the end of the day are going to be living with the development or the choice that this council makes. So I'm hoping that it just doesn't go into a general pot, that we'll hear from the residents or a subset or a advisory committee that says this is where these funds need to go and how that's priced out so that they can see real tangible benefits or return on their investment through that fund. And I know Councillor Sullivan has talked about that. It bears repeating. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, it's all something for us to think about as we go forward with all of this. How will we do this? You've got the peninsula that subsidizes most of the city through density. It's never going to have any, there's no LPP down there. There's nothing to divide anymore. So how do we balance those things as we go forward? I'm all for, though, places who get development, that they see a benefit for that. Councillor Redwan, I guess you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. So I threw you, I think, maybe to Mr. McKinnon. I'm not sure. It's an NB Power question. I'm just wondering, we're talking about potentially bringing in a data center. And with that, of course, I thought right away, St. John Energy, how much energy is going to be needed for something like that, because they have tons of energy required. And I realize that that's something that NB Power would end up overseeing. So I'm just wondering if you can give me any kind of an idea of conversations that you might have had with NB Power. I mean, we've had The paper mill close on Bayside Drive. I know the expansion out at the pulp mill is going to help them with energy. You know, do we need this actually? Like to be able to balance things out so that we're not all paying higher fees? Does it have the capacity to look after it? Where does that sit? Do you have any idea?
So the process with NB Power for any new development is there's three analysis that has to happen. The first is a feasibility study, and that's not a paid study, and it takes some time. The second part is a transmission study, and then there's a facility study. The last two are paid studies, so the developer would pay NB Power to do these studies. That process, that's how everybody gets in the queue, I'll say, with NB Power, and the analysis takes place on what the outputs will be. Data center is a big user of power. St. John Energy typically services clients up to about 10 megawatts. Data center is much more than that, so it will be an NB Power discussion. I know that those discussions are happening.
Okay, so we have some good processes in place, which is great news because down in Georgia, I don't think they have such things, and people are paying like crazy rates now because of data centers opening. I think my second question might be for you too. There has been a question today and in the past of cost benefit analysis. Obviously, it's a little speculative unless you understand which businesses would be coming, but you have an idea of some interest. Who's going to pay for this pad-ready site and any water and sewage going to it? Is it going to be business? Is it going to be the province, which essentially is a taxpayer? Is it going to be the city? How does that work?
So it's very early days. Both of the projects that I had mentioned, I have to be careful what I say here, due to non-disclosure.
Sure.
Both of the projects that I have spoken about so far have asked for raw land, which means that it's treed currently. There's no services currently. And as we get further into what this project actually looks like, then there will be discussions about water and servicing and power and all the things that go into that level of detail. We're not quite there yet. And then there's the question on who pays for what and how the deal actually goes together and how the deal actually funds some of this as well. So all of those things, all that to say, to be determined,
But,
being worked out.
I know, but you understand how the economy of all of this kind of works. I mean, aren't they going to expect us to put all the money into this pad-ready site, get water and sewage to it? The residents are basically going to pay for that, and then they open up shop.
So the pad-ready site that you're referencing is not these
what they're looking for.
separate items.
Okay.
And the two projects that I mentioned are completely separate, different location even.
So they don't have those expectations.
No.
Not
they do
having expectations on payroll and all that kind of craziness.
That's an Opportunities New Brunswick discussion, and I'm certain
That's
that they're
later.
having that.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy, you're up next.
Thank you, Your Worship. This might be more for our CFO. Are you aware, Mr. Fudge, of any models of communities that have a percentage of industrial property tax that's generated in a neighborhood that automatically goes into a fund for that neighborhood? Is there a model already in place?
Through your worship, no, I'm not aware of any models. We probably want to look at an area like Strathcona in Alberta to see if we're going to do some research to see if there is any model similar to that. But I think like anything, we're talking a lot about policy, and with policy, you look at what the objectives of the organization are, and you try to create a policy that achieves those objectives that we're looking at. So, but I have not seen any specific policies that replicate that.
Okay, because I am thinking of what Councillor Sullivan did say about Granby Westfield. They have to incentivize business to come there because it's not an attractive. So, they really have to work at it, and they need funding to do that. And as well, the community does get some funding for, community centers. And I'd like to see something come up, because it's not just Laurinville, like Milledgeville is in the same spot, right? And we're looking at doing some recreation out there, which is great, but it's something that I think we do need, and I'm hearing a theme around the table. So I think it's something that we do need to look at as a takeaway from this exercise. Thank you.
Okay. I guess that's everyone. Is everyone who's spoken who's wanted to speak? Some people haven't had a chance to speak. We're all good. Councillor Lowe, I just want to make sure I haven't missed you. Oh, Councillor, I'm going to go to Councillor Stewart, but I'll go to you as well. Make sure I haven't missed you. Are you good?
No, you haven't missed me, no.
Okay, good. Councillor Stewart?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to direct this to Ian, please. Just to satisfy some curiosity for me, because I drive through Moncton all the time, drive through Fredericton. Those industrial parks that they've built there, are they heavy industry? What I mean, there's Kenworth, there's International, there's John Deere, there's massive tractors there. Are they considered heavy industrial?
I think they're in the industrial parks. I think they have a heavy industrial designation. The land is a little bit different. It's largely warehouses.
Yeah.
And the land structure in Moncton, for example, is a little different than the land structure here. It's very easy to make pad-ready sites. It's very easy to build warehouses.
And that's more by luck over the years than by design, because they're built after St. John has been built. But the potential is there for some of these heavy industries that we have this connotation of a bad, heavy industry. But man, I'm telling you, when I drive down through those buildings, I am impressed with what's happened, how much that's developed in Fredericton and Moncton. Some of it is warehouse. Kent Building Supplies has a massive warehouse distribution center there. I'd like to believe that something like that could also happen in Laurinville over time, if we're ready to build that out. We have to just stop thinking about all the negative connotations that come with heavy industry. There's potential here for us to grow as a city. And I ask you folks, please, let's not forget that part of it. Your voices are so important. Like, if you guys hadn't have shown up from day one here, this may have already been passed. So thank you all for coming, talking. But honestly, I don't want this to be all negative, because there is potential for the city of St. John to finally get its piece of the pie. Someone said, are we in competition with Moncton? Why would we be in competition with Moncton? Well, the fact is, we are, because they are growing and they are getting these industries. They're getting these centers, and we're not. And it's time for us to change our view on why we're not. And yes, you deserve a lot down there, and we're going to make sure that you guys get some of what you deserve. We're going to. Okay, I'm telling you, everybody, you've heard it. You must feel it. We believe it. You're going to get some of what's coming to you, but I don't want us to miss this opportunity. Please. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. You have a recommendation in your kits, got 5 components, so I'm leaving it up to my team here to decide where we're going on this. The recommendation? I'll get a seconder on it. Councillor Stewart? Okay. So the recommendations in your kit's got 5 components. Oh, sorry, 6.
I do think, though, that Councillor Sullivan may be able to propose an amendment here to fit what you're talking about. And if I can just speak to that to try to help you out, Councillor Sullivan. I agree, we need a community benefits formula, not just, but one of the things I've learned in trying to take some of this governance training that we get is that really we only have 3 places we can put things. Either it's a strategy, it's a program, or it's a policy. And policy is for things that we can control directly. And as you can't control things, you go down the list of what you can do to try to push things. I think what we may need is a strategy around community benefit, so that we can dovetail the legislative restrictions, because this province is Canadian famous for restricting its municipalities to the nth degree. And every time we travel, we're reminded of how restrictive our provincial government is with our municipalities. Because if we have that strategic formula, if we have a strategy around that, and this is just for consideration, we may be able to put that in front of proponents. And if they're willing to play ball with our strategy around that benefit for those places, then that makes that proposal, those recommendations at a higher level easier. And if they don't, then that's information for us. It's not a policy that I think we can produce. I think staff are trying to thread the needle on some legislative framework handcuffs that I don't know that we can just impose development cost charges like they've been suggested that other places do. So
No, and that's, it would be for exploration for sure. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks. Actually, it was going to be just back to the process question of, I know what we have in front of us right now. I still stand by my statement, it's not good enough, and I think we can do better. I certainly understand the constraints, but as my guidance counselor friends keep telling me, you know, control what you can control. So what is within, I don't want to make a motion tonight, like, without having staff had some time to do some consultation.
Thank goodness for
and
that.
Conversation. But I also don't want this to be, hey, it was a good conversation we had, and then 2 weeks we're on to the next thing. So my ask through you to the CAO, who's ready to say something, is how do we keep this alive? How do we make sure it moves forward? Because this isn't a new conversation around this. This is the third time in the last 6 months that we've had this conversation. It's obvious that we need a strategy and a policy around it. And, you know, we have Galt Road is moving forward. The other one, the proponent chose not to move forward with, that's fine. How do we make sure this one, we get it as close to right as possible to be an example to move forward?
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you to Councillor, you know, it's a good point and something that we envisioned undertaking through the Plan SJ review. Now, appreciating that that's a massive undertaking, if it's the interest of council, we could expedite that, and as part of this recommendation, direct the CAO to return with a community benefits program for the review and consideration of council. And we could provide you with some options across the country, what they look like for consideration, further discussion, and then proceed with the creation of a plan that works for our
So
community.
are you suggesting, based on what you've heard in the conversation around here, that that get added to the motion that's currently on the floor?
Yes, if that's the will of council, I'd propose that.
Do that or do it as a separate?
You can do it as a separate item. It doesn't have to be tied to this specifically.
Okay, if we want to get through this item and then just put me on the hook for
I shall do that.
afterwards, we'll come back.
Councillor Killen, did you want to speak on that? Well, no, if you have a question, I will. Oh, comments? Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to start by saying how much I appreciate the care. I want to say a few things, so bear with me because I wrote this all down. But I will be under 3 minutes. I know the proposed expansion of the Spruce Lake Industrial Park has been incredibly difficult for everyone, I think. These past months have not been easy, and I recognize that some of my friends and neighbors are going to be very upset with my decision tonight. I want you to know this has not been an easy choice for me. I've listened to your concerns, I've had tough conversations, and have spent sleepless nights full of anxiety thinking about what's right for St. John. I respect and understand the worries about our environment, about change, and what this means for the citizens of Lorneville. And even if you disagree with me, please know that my decision comes from a place of deep care for our community and sincere hope for our future. I'm supporting the Spruce Lake Industrial Park expansion because I believe it is a necessary step for St. John's growth and prosperity. Our city needs more development-ready, non-familial legacy companies to be included in our landscape. And this land will be used to attract new businesses, create jobs, and keep our economy strong. I witnessed a level of care that went into this process by city staff that I've never seen, and I'm amazed by them, and I really commend them for that. This expansion will open the door to new opportunities. The city has listened to concerns and made real changes to the plan, and with the focus on future-focused industries like advanced manufacturing and green energy, and stronger protections for wetlands and strict environmental safeguards to protect our water and land. This won't erase pain and disagreement, but I promise to keep pushing for transparency, ongoing consultation, and the highest standards of environmental protection as this project moves forward. And of course, a solid legacy fund for the community that I think it absolutely deserves. I also want to address the concern that some community members have raised about my role in the Industrial Park Board. I want to be transparent. As a councillor, I serve on a number of boards and committees, and as part of my official duties, just like all of my lovely colleagues here. These appointments are made to ensure council is informed and involved in key community organizations and not to advance personal interests. I do not have any personal or financial interest in the industrial park or its expansion. My role on the board is a representative of council to provide oversight and ensure accountability. I have sought advice and have been assured that this does not constitute a conflict of interest under our rules, and I am not benefiting personally or privately from this decision. My commitment is to act in the best interest of our entire community, and I take that responsibility very seriously. Thank you for your honesty, your passion, your commitment to St. John, and even though we may not agree on this decision, I believe we all want what's best for our community, and I hope we can move forward together. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Killen, for your comments as well. The west side of St. John, sometimes known as Ward 1, has been absolutely has been peppered with development. It's because I would say it's where a lot of the opportunity is. But and that's not to say that the other ward councillors or other councillors at large or Worship, there's not development happening in those respective wards. But I can go through a number of them, and they are large, complex files. And what is unique and what I love and appreciate about the West Side is it is a collection of very distinct communities that you get nowhere else other than the West Side. If you just want to test that, just tell somebody you live near Dominion Park and they'll tell you how quickly they live on Randolph Island. Right? Tell them they're from, tell them they live in the city of St. John, and they're very quickly, and I'll end here because I could go on with a number of these. They'll tell you very fast, no, I'm from Lornville, or I'm from Fundy Heights, or I'm from Milford. And you could go on and on and on about that. Job creation, attracting investment, increased tax revenue, support for local businesses, land utilization, improved infrastructure, the encouragement or the fostering of innovation, proximity to our port, access to transportation networks. That takes me to another one. We just think about how long ago the Lancaster Logistics Park was there, just to help illustrate how much development has been concentrated across that Reversing Falls Bridge and above city line. The development of the local economy, boost to population growth. We're getting about 1,000 people out at Sea Dogs games. We need more population. We're desperate for population, and it's difficult in these moments because nobody needs to be lectured to. So I'm almost saying that as a thought cloud to myself. The spillover effect that can happen with housing and other things. But what really resonated with me was one of the highlights, or headlines I should say, that I read this evening that came about in the last 2 weeks, and it was the port's growth, and CEO Esther Brooks is here this evening, but the port's growth in 2024 is linked to its diversity. We have to diversify, and we can't stay static, and this is part of that. It's part of that solution. It's part of that recipe to continue to diversify, to continue to grow, and evolve. And this evening, I'll be supporting the recommendation to go forward with this, and hopefully the city manager comes back with an idea with a substantial legacy fund that can help support some of the priorities of our Lornville community that's playing host to this. But I did want to I did want to cite some of the reasons why I will be doing this without being dismissive of the concerns that the community has listed. So this evening, my vote is certainly in favor of what the proponents have said as we move forward with this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, Your Worship. I do love this process, as much as this has been a record-setting precedent for us in the city of St. John. You know, I'll admit it, I knew a little bit about Laurenville before this started. I know a whole lot more about Laurenville now. I'm a boater. I'd seen Laurenville a lot from the other side. I hadn't stood next to the lighthouse, but I'd seen the lighthouse a lot until I got the Galbraith tour last fall. You know, and I don't know if the folks who now live at Accomack but are attached themselves to Laurenville are still here. But if you go out to Accomack, there's a road called Sullivan Road. At the end of Sullivan Road is a farmhouse, purchased first by the Sullivan family in 1840. So when I hear the legacy of the families that live in Laurenville, I'm certainly can empathize with the length of time it's now occupied in the summers by my uncle, who is the last of his family, and is getting tossed out by NB Power, who's going to put a power line over his house. So I get it. I certainly understand, I think a little bit, the pain that you folks are feeling. And gosh, you know, I have to balance that with where are we as a city, and the other councillors, I think, have done a great job of talking to that. But it's also where, and with respect, Your Worship, I get it, Uptown doesn't have many places to grow, but Uptown has 2 splash pads, Tolimakahammock, a couple of theaters, and is a beautiful spot and a lot going on. And because of the density Uptown, we can afford to invest in Uptown.
Exactly.
Like the density of Laurenville, we'd never be able to invest in all that stuff that I think is really cool out there. We need to do a good job, and people have said it around the table, but I got to say it again for the umpteenth. Let's do a good job. I like stealing Councillor Norton's term of the host community strategy, whatever we end up doing with it. Because there is an opportunity here. We got to get all the other stuff right. Let's make sure we get the groundwater stuff right and the environmental stuff right. And if we make enough money, get that second access. But in the meanwhile, so we need to pay back the host community for being a host community. They have been done wrong too many times for being a host community for too many other things where folks walked away. So let's not walk away, council. Let's get it right. Thanks.
Councillor Redwan?
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. It's definitely a difficult decision. This is probably the biggest one this council has made by far. You know, and old feelings have come up about all sorts of things like expropriation. And I want to personally say that I understand this because my family was expropriated from Cushbequack National Park. So it can be something very difficult to deal with, and I understand that. You know, it's something that we've, you know, had to work really hard to move on from. It was really, really difficult. This council has really wanted to listen to residents, and I think that we have done really well with that. Staff, of course, having numerous meetings with the task force, which is something that normally doesn't happen with this process. And I know residents haven't been happy with the way that it's gone. But one thing that I will say is I've seen like significant changes happening in the plan from those meetings. So I think hats off to you because you obviously really advocated very, very well. This is not easy. I've heard from many people that don't live in Laurenville but live in St. John that they want this to move forward a lot. And because the process has taken so long, I think I've gotten to hear from a lot more people about how their business depends on it, that they're depending on it. I've listened to it. I've just said, I can listen to your comments and I can't comment. But this council's main focus is growth. And the industrial park expansion is a council priority. It was something we put in place 6 months into our term. That's not been a secret to anybody. The question comes up, do I feel confident in the processes and the EIA process, the process for selecting business? I don't see any reason not to. I appreciate staff, by the way, kind of going through details about the processes, because it's not in our hands. Once that goes off to the province, that's in their hands. I want to talk about the host community because it's been discussed so much. And I agree. I think that definitely there needs to be more investments if this goes ahead tonight in Laurenville. I think the city had always good intention to invest more in Laurenville, but this is the problem. No, the problem is this. We have a $550 million infrastructure deficit in the city of St. John. That's the ultimate issue. Tax reform has been a massive problem for the city, and this is part of the problem. So for decades, you can think that the pulp mill has been on the west side, as well as the largest oil refinery in the company has been on the east side. So, there's no LPP for the residents in those areas. So we have to keep in mind that some funds that would end up coming from this certainly should benefit the greater St. John area as well, while still definitely making sure that there's money in the host community. So I think the city, really has to think about growth, and it's a time right now for people to graduate. And when I think back to when I graduated, I'm 47, graduated in 96, most of my friends moved. They moved all out west. Their parents are now aging. Many of them cannot come back to St. John, but they're here. And they had to leave. There was no opportunity for them. So I guess finally in the end, the biggest thing for me is I'm thinking this is a potential of approximately 20 new businesses to St. John, large businesses, large investments. To me, it's about the future of the city, thinking about a $550 million infrastructure deficit. There needs to be money to give back to the community because there hasn't been. So the future of the city needs projects like this, and as well as lots of housing developments. So I'm going to be voting in favor tonight, Mayor.
Deputy?
Thank you, Worship. Well, there's not much that can be said that hasn't already been said, but, I chair the Growth Committee for the City of St. John, and I've sat through a council that actually had to cut $10 million worth of services and infrastructure benefits to the community because nobody's going to do it for you. The province, it's your problem, not ours. So we lived through that. We got through it. We fixed our financial situation. We got to a point now where we can actually make our city into a livable city. And you can only do that stuff with growth, with tax growth. You can only improve your schools, hospitals, tax growth. Everything, it depends on that. And, we saw for so many years, as Craig Estabrook, pointed out, that St. John didn't grow. It was stagnant. We were in a bad situation and we ended up cutting $10 million out of our city. And I think we're at a point now where things are turning, but we are turning in a way that we can take and invest now, which I think everybody around this table is in favor of, money that's, grown in a certain area. Some of that money should stay in that area and improve that area. And I think that's where we're at. And I think that's one of the things that, we really need to work on. But without the growth, without the jobs, without the population, without all that stuff, we can't grow our economy, we can't improve our infrastructure. And I think it's for all those reasons that even though growth is hard, it's something that every community has to go through. And I'll be supporting this tonight going forward. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy. I'm going to call the question in a second, and I will say that it's probably fair ball to say that we have all had a lot of large, complex files in our wards over, I think, since we've been a council as a team. It hasn't been easy. Things have slipped through our fingers sometimes, and sometimes they haven't, and we've had a lot of resistance, and sometimes we don't. But we always try to figure out how do we create some balance? How can we look after the 800 people in Laurenville, but how can we look after the 78,000 people in the city of St. John? You've got the fastest growing port in North America. Growth isn't easy. It's always difficult. It's because we're not used to it in St. John. So we've got to move forward, and everybody will talk about, yes, money should stay there. I'm for that. I'm 100% for that. But density is what is your savior for any city, because your services are far easier to provide if you have density. And I always look at, when I hear about different things, I always look at what's the tax base when I hear people talking about we need this or we need that, we need roads, we need all those things all over the city, but you're 315 square kilometers and you're 78,000 people, you've got 600 kilometers of roads, 1,200 lanes to fill potholes in and plow. So, it's not that we make these decisions easily. We try to make them with all these factors that we're thinking about over a whole scope of ideas. And we have a couple of wards, at least, that have tents in them right now. And that's huge for us. So not everybody has those in their backyard. So how do we mitigate that as well? So this is why we need growth. And this is why we're here tonight. And we've been here. We've tried to make this process as fulsome and as transparent as we can for everyone. It's the first time we've ever done it like this. So I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of the staff. I think the reports that we've gotten have been good and comprehensive. So I'm going to come back to Councillor Sullivan for a motion, but you've got, for this one item, you've got 6 in your kit there. I've got a mover. I've got a seconder. So I'll call the question if we're ready. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Sullivan, can I go? Okay, sorry.
Your Worship, this would require 6 motions to pass. So the first one, I assume, would have been for the approval of first reading of the municipal plan
I've got them all
amendment.
here, yep.
And I have to read these by title. So this is titled, "A Law to Amend the Municipal Plan Bylaw."
Okay, and then I've got approve second reading by title. And Deputy on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Okay, so for the zoning bylaw amendments, I need a motion to approve first reading by title. Councillor Radwan and the Deputy. On the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Zoning bylaw approved second reading by title. Councillor Norton. Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Zoning bylaw amendment, CP 111-197, approved first reading by title. The Deputy and Councillor Killen on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
And approve a second reading by title. Councillor Stewart and Councillor Norton on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, now I'm going over to you, Councillor Sullivan. Have to get Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make a motion that we direct the CAO to report back to council with a strategy of financial support for host communities of significant projects.
Okay, on the question? Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Lowe, over to you.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
Thank you, Councillor.
Conflicting land use. Can't put heavy industrial beside residential. Conflicting. Conflict.
You know what, folks?